disturbance in the force, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror.
That's a clean burning hell, I tell you what. Bruh.
Oddio! No, fate una clip.
No, I'm taking it right now.
How do you grade that? Yo, this game is so fucking whack! Oh my god, this game is so... Stay out, money. Stay out, money. Yes, stay out. Thank you. Money, your ass, alright?
Jackson is so. Oh my god. Yo, who the fuck? Yo, this is running around. Yo!
Let me get my back. Give me that. Yeah, come here.
Like what? You just tap it square.
Y'all got it. Y'all got it.
Yeah.
Hey, boy, ain't no fucking way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy.
Oh my god! Goddamn,
So 3 times! Up square! Come on! Come on! Jan made a game so fucking bad! That it's this bad! All he has to do is up square!
In successful franchises, there are new people to replace them. I feel like in 2K, what we're seeing is not only franchise fatigue, we're not seeing many new people get interested in this game.
Everybody's not getting spots, you know, the people that go on streak, you know, the people that go on streaks, they're not getting that many games no more, man.
5,000 hours. Over the past 7 or so years I've been playing 2K, that's the amount of time I've poured into this series. In that time, I've seen 2K go from the gold standard of sports games to whatever the past 3 years of next gen have been. Over the years, we have seen the game deteriorate in terms of gameplay, content, and community in ways I've never seen in a game before, and it seriously needs to be addressed. The gameplay might be the worst I've ever seen in a 2K. The player builder is a broken, horribly unbalanced mess. The content is dog shit. The city is one of the worst features I've ever seen in a sports game. The MyCareer Story sucks. And the community continues to grow increasingly toxic in AIDS year after year. The game is a parasitic, money-grubbing cesspool that's gotten way too expensive for any sane person. And the game modes are so bad now, and some of them haven't even gotten much needed attention in years. All these issues have added up in recent 2Ks to the point where we have easily the worst game since 2K18. And I gotta be honest, 23 might be worse. Now, before I keep going, I should make clear that this video is only going to be focused on the MyCareer mode in 2K. If you want my opinion on the rest of the modes, well, for one, I don't play my team, never have, never will. But I will say that the My League mode is the best out of all the sports games. And the addition of NBA eras and the Jordan challenges are great new pieces of content for the players who buy 2K for the league and the simulation aspects of the game. First off, to understand where I'm coming from when I talk about the game, I play the more competitive aspects of 2K. I used to pour over 1,000 hours into each 2K, and most of that time was exclusively in Pro-Am or playing in a community league like WR. Since then, however, I've stepped away from that for various reasons, including 2K being terrible now. So I kinda sit in this middle ground between the two camps that seem to butt heads a lot when people talk about 2K on Twitter. The changes I suggest in this video primarily come from someone who wants 2K to be a balanced, fun experience for the most people possible while delivering the highest skill gap possible in the game. And to help make this vid, I recruited 2 of the people I run 2K with to participate in an interview where we discussed the various issues we have with the game.
I've been playing 2K since like 2K7 or 2K8, competitively since like 2K17 or 2K18. Was like originally just a huge fan of the culture. I mean, it's like basketball, the NBA. You know, it's like I think most kids are kind of drawn to that. 2K orgs, forever talented, as Ginge knows. That's his clan. Businesses. I started Hall of Fame League a few years ago, and just kind of saw like an opportunity when the console switched to next gen to slide in and try to like provide like a similar service to WR, and maybe even like compete with WR, you know, eventually. And it worked out, and so I would say that we're the, you know, second largest host in North America. I mean, overall for 2K Pro-Am related events, we've hosted events in Australia, Europe. You know, we're definitely pushing. Let's see. Another business would be Ignite Grinders. Ginge, as well as you know, is an owner in that as well. You know, we grind builds and you know, do player services. So very intimately aware of, you know, the 2K community and the ins and outs. So, but yeah, that's kind of my background, I would say.
So I've been playing 2K since probably about 2K17. I started playing competitively in probably 2K19, and since then I've got over $30,000 earned just from playing Pro-Am. Orgs, clans, businesses I'm associated with. I founded FT, Forever Talented, with several friends of mine. I also help lead 4L, which is another kind of, it's called 4Life. It's like a 2K based org. Yeah, you know, Danger and I are business partners with Ignite. I've helped out with Hoff several times in the past. I've helped run 2K League tourneys, stuff like that, specifically with Mavs Gaming.
So shout out to them for taking the time to help me with this video and adding their 2 cents to the issues I'm going to be covering. Couple more things I want to touch on before moving on. The first is this notion that 2K23 is a good game because some people had fun on it, or their content happened to blow up on 23. I did not make this video to disparage or shame people for having fun on 23. And you can like 23 as much as you want. No one else can take that from you. My problem is when people conflate these feelings with talking about the game and they somehow rationalize 2K23 is any good simply because they had some fun on it. Again, I'm looking at this game objectively, with the perspective that a game should be balanced, fun, and skill-oriented, and 23 fails on all counts for the majority of the people who played this game. Saying you had fun on a game is not some sort of argument in favor of it being objectively good. For example, I had fun with some IRLs on Battlefield 2042 at launch, but I'd be crazy to suggest that game was any good. Last thing, man, listening to the Twitter spaces and threads of people talking about this game has me rattled sometimes. We've got people in this community talking about things they don't know shit about. Let's be real. We have content creators who do nothing but make build videos and whatnot, speaking on serious gameplay and mechanical issues with the game, and after listening to them, it's just pretty clear they don't have a single clue as to what the problem is. Many of the solutions I've heard from those kinds of people are some of the most brain-dead ideas I've ever heard for a 2K game. Some dudes in these spaces seriously argue that this game is good, that the game is balanced. No, bro, no. Not even most casuals like this game, even though there's really not that many left around, and I'll touch on that toward the end of the vid. When it comes to gameplay issues, 2K needs to listen to the comp side of the community more, especially after seeing how 23 ended up after primarily listening to the more casual audience. The people playing Pro-Am and Stage every day know a lot more about how the game works and how to exploit it than these Jimmies and Timmies loading up on Park maybe 5 to 10 hours a week. The gameplay has taken such a nosedive because 2K has implemented changes that kill a lot of the different skill gaps we used to have in older 2Ks because the voices of these sim heads are outweighing the input from comp players. 2K23 is a game built on changes requested from casuals. Think about it! The adrenaline boosts and removal of quick stops are just a couple of many gameplay and mechanical changes added. Comp players only got, what, greens only and the dunk meter, which I'm being generous for even counting given how broken it is in this game. 2K should try and find a balance between both camps' feedback, because when you only really listen to these park and rec bots, you end up with a game like 23. I mean, I go on Twitter, and I see these rec warriors, these sim heads, who do nothing but do post moves, speaking ill on how the game is played at higher levels, and that all this post-scoring nonsense is how real basketball is played.
But Wully, I don't want to see guards dribbling for 24 seconds. Everyone shooting threes or rim running isn't real ball. 2K's supposed to be a simulation basketball game.
What? Would you shut the fuck up?
First off, you goofs, 2K is a fucking video game! This is not just some outlet for you to live out your failed hoop dreams. And constantly crying to 2K about left riding and whatnot is just killing this game, man. Hell, these people don't even know what left riding is. They look at a guard doing some size-up combos with some lateral movement, and they call it left riding. Gee, it's not like the entire point of dribbling is to use lateral movement to create separation from the defender. And by the way, the reason comp doesn't really use post scores is because, guess what? It's not efficient basketball. That's why 3 hunting and rim running are the go-to strats in 2K, and it will always be that way, no matter how much you bitch and complain about it. Y'all think you know ball, but you don't even realize that the mid-range is the least efficient scoring method in basketball. These people think they know anything about 2K systems and exploits, and normally I wouldn't care, except for the fact that 2K listens to these people. I mean, seriously, people post clips of post fades as if it's just not timing a jump shot. You fucks realize that every other method of scoring in 23 at the very least requires you to time your shot? Just doing a jab with the right stick and then timing the press of the square button is not this insanely skilled method. Yeah, bro, post scoring takes so much more skill than the stuff those 2K League pros are doing. Let me post some more clips of me spending 12 seconds off the shot clock busting moves on rec shitters. This is real skill! This is that real shit! Let me just activate my post-scoring takeover and do a post-spin move. Hey, just ignore the fact that's so broken. That's better for the defender to use fucking emotes instead of guarding up. Oh, what? What? I'm struggling to guard this dribbler? Skill issue? Please! Please! The game must be broken! How dare this loser use left-right cheese?
That was an overreaction.
Okay. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh. Look, man, I don't have a problem with how people want to play the game. You want to make a post-scoring build and pull off some nice moves in the park or rec? Go for it. I've got zero problem with that. I'm not going to sit here and dictate how people need to play this game. However, I can't say the same for some of these sim heads on Twitter. That part of the community feels the need to dictate how 2K is played, and the feedback those people give are part of the reason 23 is as bad as it is. The constant crying from bad players about dribbling and quick stops gave us a game where everyone either just fades from 3 or rim runs. Again, play the game how you want. Just stop giving feedback that restricts what we can do in a virtual basketball game that lowers the skill ceiling. Now, fortunately, most content creators, 2K League pros, and other big voices in the community are on point for the most part, so I can't really complain too much. I just wanted to speak on how there's a big difference between someone saying, oh, I actually like 2K23, I've had some fun on it, and someone saying 2K23 is a great game and is pretty balanced and blah 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 blah. This game is objectively terrible in so many different areas, and I wouldn't be able to make a video this long covering many of these issues if there weren't objectively awful parts of this game. So, with all that ranting out of the way, let's get into the rest of the video.
It sucks! This game sucks!
Starting off with gameplay, the shooting. Shooting in 23 is terrible, and it's not because of the game being green or miss. Green or miss is purely an aesthetic question, and 2K definitely expanded the green windows for 23. No, the biggest problem with 23's shooting is the varying shot timings. In previous 2Ks, the timing for a standing shot would be the same, so all you would need to do is get used to your shot's timing and be able to shoot open shots solely using muscle memory. But in 23, standing open shots now have varying timings. This was done to prevent Zen users from being able to get consistent greens through cheating. In case you don't know how Zens work for 2K, people using Zens could use a script that times a button press to the exact green window timing for their jump shot, so they wouldn't need to time their shots. Well, 23 fixed that, at the cost of everyone now having an inconsistent jumper. Look, I hate cheaters as much as the next guy, but I don't really appreciate it when my gameplay is affected for the worse because we need to account for a small minority of players who feel the need to cheat. Now, to shoot effectively in 23, you need to be able to watch your jump shot animation and know your release cue to get greens. On paper, this sounds perfectly fine, and in offline game modes, I'm perfectly okay with this change. And some people would argue, hey, this change would force players to pay attention to their jump shot and adjust their timing as needed. This means there's a skill gap since shooters can't rely on muscle memory. See, that would only make sense if the varying shot timings had any consistency. Skill gaps only exist in game systems that are consistent and not severely influenced by RNG. Again, when you're playing NBA games by yourself, the shooting isn't that bad. However, this does not translate well when you start playing in online modes because the varying timing mechanic doesn't account for the varying latency and delay you may get when playing online. Anyone who's played 2K knows that the latency between Park, Rec, and Pro-Am are different. Your connections to 2K servers are always changing slightly. So between the shot timing and latency with the servers always changing, it makes shooting in online modes a complete pain in the ass. Seriously, when you're playing online and taking a shot, you're basically guessing using the typical timing of your jump shot and praying that your shot timing isn't randomly too fast or you get a nasty load up. So basically, when you take a shot, you're guessing the timing based on the typical timing from your shot and the apparent speed of the animation when you start the shot. In online modes, this boils down to a split-second guess, and that's not even accounting for the changing latency with the servers. Shooting becomes a guessing game and lowers the skill ceiling by preventing those elite shooters from being able to make shots at high rates since they'll always be catching the occasional quick shot or load up. And the funniest thing about this change is that it doesn't even stop the cheaters, since you can still cheat for greens using the shot meter. Now, I don't know for sure how it works, but based on what I've heard and what I know as a software engineer, I can make a pretty good guess. How it's done is using computer vision technology that watches the shot meter on your screen and a script will press and hold the button for the exact timing needed to hit the green window based on the visual feedback. And even worse, the varying shot times have made the cheating method even better according to the guy who made and sells this tech to players. Now, I won't go into any more detail on how I believe it works because I don't want to potentially spread the method for the sake of the community's sanity. The only way to remove that method would be to remove the shot meter, and that's not happening, obviously. Okay, so if dudes can still cheat with the shooting, why keep the varying shot timings? All it does is make the gameplay worse for everyone else. 2K should just return to the way it was before. I don't really care if dudes are gonna use Zens, because guess what? Basketball is much more than a game of just shooting. You gotta be able to play defense, move the ball, and do a lot of other things to be great at the game aside from shooting. It's not like playing an FPS game like COD, where cheating for headshots makes you a god. Zens aren't a guaranteed win nearly as much as it is in other games. Just let us have consistent shot timings back and let the good players beat Zen users in other aspects of the game. It's not like Zen users even make up a ton of the player base. Not to mention that it makes the overall game experience worse because casuals who could barely shoot before now have no chance and just feel the need to try and mash the paint, turning the game into a mash fest where shitters can't do anything on offense. I've seen how some of y'all play in the rec, and the rec warriors are in shambles, let me tell you. Now, before I move on, let me be very clear about this. I do not have a problem with shots slowing down due to low stamina or a shot being heavily contested. I am explicitly talking about those wide open standing shots from perimeter.
But I mean, I think this year I like the fact that they tried to add nuance to the game and to try to add like some skill gap to like certain certain areas of shooting. I will say though, personally in online play, I just don't think it was a good addition in a lot of ways. It's just there's so many variations of shots. I mean, we already have like 200 to 300 jump shots on the game. And then on top of that, you've got releases. And then on top of that, you've got different gathers. And, then contest, how much contest on the shot changes the speed. You know, your attribute changes the speed. Like, there are just so many variables. To me, it's making it so hard, you know, for players to be consistent and for players to ultimately have fun on the game, which is why we all play video games. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's more important to me than anything. Is you're making the casuals disinterested because there are so many variables to shoot.
I agree that their head was in the right place when it came to the shooting mechanics this year, but I think they did kind of just overkill it, is what I would use to best describe it. Like, if there was maybe just one of the new mechanics where if your shot changed based on your stamina, just that'd be fine. Or if your shot changed just based on the contest, just that'd be fine. But having all of those different things together on top of, like Danger said, the gathers and different variables that come into play, especially in online play against, you know, other people that are actually good at 2K, like, suddenly that's just your jump shot's almost never the same, unless you're wide open with full stamina. I would say that the only 2Ks I can think of that had worse shooting would be 2K21 Next Gen for a number of reasons, but I believe that's actually more based towards the contest system. 2K21 Current Gen, I think the shooting was abysmal. I think that this game could go hand in hand with that in terms of where it would lie on the scale of good shooting and bad shooting. And you take a game like maybe 2K20 or 2K22 where the shooting was 2K22 outside of whites going in, the shooting was great. Same with 20. You know, 20 had perfect shooting in my opinion.
I played Play Now like a few months ago, you know, after playing MyCareer predominantly all year. Like, man, some of the shot timings are also so drastically different. You know, even in offline, I cannot imagine playing at like a high difficulty online against somebody else, especially if it's like competitive. Like, there's no way that a casual, just in the span of a few months, is gonna have fun on the game enough to like fight through that. Like, whatever that, like those plateaus and like those challenges to get good at the game. There's no way. And I feel like that, in my opinion, I think that's a huge reason why the community kind of died out quicker this year. I think shooting specifically like killed the game more than anything else. It's just too difficult.
In your opinion, is it worth like nerfing shooting so badly just to get rid of Zen users? Was it really worth it in the end, do you think?
I mean, I will say that you have to have like a foundation for esports or for your events. You know, like 2K is a major title. You can't have like, you know, your player base, your participant base able to go on Amazon or wherever I don't know where you get Zens at, but if it's a, you know, relatively low cost to get a Zen, that's gonna ruin your entire online experience. Like, that would be the equivalent of like somebody going on COD, you know, with a Zen, and they're able to, you know, as soon as they see someone, they're able to kill them like every time. Like, that's game breaking. So
that's an actual thing too. That is
right. See, I'm not as, you know, I'm not as knowledgeable about some of the other games and stuff, but you have to cut it out. Yeah, like, you can't let the Zen go. It just creates so many problems if you're trying to have like an esport. You know, say you have like half your prospects for using a Zen. I mean, it's just, you can just see how the problems are going to be bad there, especially with 2K, specifically with my team. That is like kind of that's their big event, the big tournament. You know, what is it, 250,000 that they pay out for? So like, you could just have, I mean, obviously people are spending thousands on cards. Yeah, they're going to go buy a Zen if it means they're going to have a better chance. Absolutely, that's going to happen. So I think you have to make changes, but I think, as Ginge said earlier, I think he really like nailed it. When you introduce like multiple things within like a year, it is just like, it's too much. Like stamina, attribute, contest, all that. There are just too many variables. There's no way that, I mean, you can process all of that when you're taking a jump shot. I mean, I forget the terms of like RNG or whatever.
Yeah,
right.
RNG.
Yeah, right. There's just too much, you know, to me it makes the game less competitive when there are a million variables, because no one's able to actually to perform at that level consistently, like no matter how hard they try. So I believe that Danger was definitely
pretty spot on with a lot of the things that he said. My personal opinion is I don't have the strongest feelings towards Zen users. I believe that in prior years, shooting is definitely not one of the biggest skill gap areas once you pass a certain threshold of player. So I think for casuals, like, yeah, being able to time your shot is a skill gap. Like, a lot of casuals struggle with that. But once you get into the comp games, playing in a league and stuff like that, people don't struggle to time their jump shot. So at that point, the skill gap becomes all of the other factors, being able to get open or throwing the pass at the right time, things like that. So I think for casual players, yeah, the getting rid of Zen users is super important. I think that they could have gone about it a different way. If I'm not mistaken, aren't there other games that can detect whenever you have equipment plugged into your Xbox or PlayStation or PC?
I'm not an expert on Zens or anything, but I work in tech. I assume how Zens work is that it's a little script that's attached to your controller. So when you input a certain button on your controller, it passes through the Zen before sending to your console, and then it'll just actually give out the automatic input. So like, say it takes 65 milliseconds to hit a green all the time, 100%. Well, you just program your Zen to when you tap X, it'll just like create an input where you actually held down X for that exact amount of time, and pass it on to the console. So every time the game thinks you're timing your shot exactly like that, even though you're not.
Right.
I think that's how it works.
It wouldn't be detectable at that point, though?
I couldn't tell you. I know plenty of games have anti-cheat. If it isn't possible to actually use an anti-cheat to track that, at that point, what I would suggest is 2K just to track the inputs on their servers, and if someone's inputting the same exact thing when they're shooting, ban them straight up.
Yeah, it should be that easy.
No one is timing their shot that consistently down to the millisecond anyways. Obviously there's a lot of nuance to that, but it's not impossible for them to track. They don't have to change around how shooting works just to address it. I think it's the point we're all trying to make here.
Yeah.
Just having fun with off limits in Mister's house.
Did I just catch you having fun?
Describe your issues with dribbling system mechanics 23. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like, the same thing that everyone has felt all year, and it's the stamina bars. I mean, they tried to neutralize left and right, and they tried to neutralize some of the glitches, the speed glitches, and whatnot. And I think that there is merit to that, to trying to stop something that makes the game less skill based or whatever. But ultimately, if you go back and just look at it, I mean, most of the combos and stuff are always left-right. In some variation of it, man, it doesn't matter. It's always left-right because that's how you move the defender. That's how you generate, that's how you generate something that the defender's going to react to, that's going to get you open.
It's how you create a lane to drive to the rim off of, and then you
right,
have to make a choice.
Yeah, or even have them step left to stop you on the drive and you pull back right to shoot, it's so, I understand why they introduce some things. I absolutely hate the stamina bars, though. I think that is probably the worst thing that 2K has ever brought in. I understand their thought process on it, but I think that if you're going to do that, there needs to be less things that take a stamina bar, and I feel like it's better for defense than it is for offense. I think people spamming still and spamming Y, I think that's way different than somebody chaining together dribble moves, which takes actual hours of labor to get good at that. No one just picks up the controller and can manipulate the dribble system like that. That takes work. So to neutralize that, you're making your participant base less talented, in my opinion. That's just my take on it, though. But yeah. What do you think, Chinch?
So whenever I read this, I took it a different way. I mean, the biggest glaring issue to me is the lack of a quick stop at all. Because that takes away so many ways to score for guards, which again is favoring the defense in a huge way. Outside of that, though, I think that dribbling, even if you just compare 2K22 and 2K23, because they do have very similar dribble systems. Obviously the stamina was better in 22, you didn't have the stupid adrenaline bars, stuff like that, but 22 felt so much more polished and quick, and like your inputs actually did something. On 23, I think I would argue that it's actually the most sluggish and delayed player movement that you've ever had in a 2K. At least since I've been playing. So at least since 2K17, I think it's easily the worst. I also think that there's a lot of issues with the blow-bys currently for every single kind of player. Like anybody that drives to the rim, the blow-bys are bad.
Which 2K do you think had the best dribbling in your opinion? Like, overall, like the best system. What do you think 2K moving forward should try to emulate?
Like I say, it's like really tough because of like recency bias and whatnot, and just like, you know, I feel like anything is better than what 23 is right now. I mean, once again, Jidge is going to be the authority on this. I'm going to defer to him, but I would say, from my opinion, 17 had a lot of pros. I feel like 17's dribble system, there was a lot of good, like to me, just based on like the pulse of the community, they speak more fondly about a 17 than they do any of the other ones. But then I would also say like probably like 19 and 20. I think that 19 and 20, you could take some really good things from both of those games, and you if you could combine some of the pros from those two games alone, I think that is where you want to be at with 2K dribbling. But once again, I would ultimately defer to Jen. This is kind of more of his topic.
Yeah, you actually named out my big three. My big three were 17, 19, and 20. I know a lot of people really liked 17, a lot of people really liked 19. I personally excelled the most on 20. I made a lot of money selling dribble tutorials on 20. It was a great little side hustle I had during COVID and everything. I think that the consensus right now among dribblers would lie somewhere between 17 and 19. 18 should genuinely get an honorable mention. I think that 18 is often overlooked just because the game itself was rough. But the dribbling in that game was solid.
Yeah, I think everyone who played that game would agree, aside from maybe like the step backs and whatnot.
Yeah, sure. The snatch back, pull up midi, stuff like that. Like, obviously that's, you know, every game has had their flaws. 18 has significantly less than either 21 or 23 in my opinion, so that's kind of where that comment came from.
So, last little thing, how would we improve the dribbling from 23? I think we already covered this. I think the big issue everyone can agree on is the stamina bars, the adrenaline bars. They just, yeah, the adrenaline bars. Do we think that's probably the biggest issue right now?
They need to, I would say they need to at least, like, I don't know, either remove them for offense or add additional bars or change what takes a stamina bar away. I get that like speed boosting can be like really advantageous if you can do it constantly. But I mean at the same time, I mean, that's kind of the point. Like that's like what guards do in the NBA is they change speed rapidly, and like that's how they get open. So, I guess like you do have to have some parameters for like how much is being done. And, I guess somebody thought that 3 speed boosts were, like, enough. But, I mean, on a video game, it's different, and 24 seconds is, like, a really long time. So, I just think it's bad for competitive play, and I don't see that it merits enough to make casuals want to play the game more. In fact, I would almost argue that it's probably turning casuals away because they don't know how to dribble, and they don't understand how to manipulate the system well. And then they're out of stamina bars, like within 4 or 5 dribble moves. So, but
unpopular opinion. I actually think that speeding up player movement would go farther than taking away the stamina bars. I have been playing a little bit of 2K here and there over the past month. I found just a group of dudes that's pretty casual, but they run matchups every so often. I'll run with them whenever they hit me up, and I've been running point guard, and I can't remember the last time that I actually had a problem with the stamina bars, and that's just the adrenaline bars, if we're being technical. But I think that once you get a feel, and it does take a while, it takes a good minute just sitting in the gym, dribbling and figuring out how to manipulate it. But once you get the hang of it, it's not as much of an issue anymore. But the biggest thing to me is that you're still slow. And I think that this year, unlike almost any other year, guards' lateral movement is slower than locks, or even power forwards at times.
Alright.
Lateral movement does feel slower for ball handlers. No matter what you do, that's with like 95 Excel. Yeah, it does seem like it makes a difference, but not like it has in previous years. And honestly, Ginch is right. I think the stamina bars, once you dribble for a while, like you do get the hang of it, and you understand, like you can even cancel out of certain animations, you know, with like the momentum cross and stuff like that. Yeah, I think he's right. I don't think that it's worth what they were trying to achieve by it, but
I agree with that for sure.
No, I do think that Ginch is right. It's ultimately the player movement does seem like what is so bad. It's just the game is too slow. There's no excitement. I mean, you know what I mean? Like better player movement from your dribble moves would ultimately be better than removing stamina bars. I agree with that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I can attest to, just playing back through all these old games again. The movement back in 16, 17, and even 19 was a lot faster, more fluid than what we have now. It honestly just feels like shit going back and playing the new games after all that. So
yeah,
I definitely agree with that. One other thing I just kind of thought off the top of my head, what if adrenaline bars got more depending on your ball handling attribute? Like, Danger, you said you don't think 3's enough. What if a PG with a high enough attribute got like 5 bars?
I think that's genius.
Yeah, we've actually, Ginch and I have probably discussed, we've definitely talked about this before. I think we've probably discussed that, and Ginch might have even been the one to bring that up before, actually. Just like to add bars to it. I think if you have a higher, ability to handle, then there should be advantages to that. And someone that has a 60 ball handle, and 60 stamina or whatever shouldn't have the same exact like adrenaline boost as someone with 95, excel at 95 ball handle. So yeah, I mean, I'm open to that. But I think really they do need to lock in on movement, and even if they don't want to do a lot with movement, it needs to be like more like balanced. Like guards should be able to break ankles or stun more effectively if they're able to dribble more effectively. Like, I don't think someone that can't really dribble or chain combos, etc., should be, having the same success as someone that can really manipulate the system. And I feel like they really neutralize a lot of that. I don't see a lot of stuns or anything that's good for the offense this year.
Yeah.
So I think, if they added some of that could help too.
Well, you look at somebody like, and I think both of these guys are great players. I think they're great at what they do, but they're not dribblers. You look at somebody like Ant or Joe Knows, and they're not dribblers like that at all. Right. They're people that are good at getting to the rim, and they're good at getting to the rim because they make one sharp movement, and then they blow by and they're gone. They're gone to the rim. And then you have other people out here that are dribblers. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I just see who wins. I know that Joe Knows is winning right now, but these people that are able to dribble aren't getting a 3 at nearly the same rate, and that's obviously 3s are supposed to be harder. However, in past years there was a reason that the 3-ball reigned supreme every single time, every single game. You went for 3s. Teams ran the PNR, they went for 3s because guards who could dribble like that could get to a 3, and that's just not as much the case this year.
All right.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's actually pushed people away from dribbling mechanics as much, and it's kind of more for like game. Like this is like literally the year of like game management. I feel like, and which is good. I mean, because some of the best point guards, Keena, Greenlight, like they're great game managers. You know what I mean? But in order to make great YouTube content, what do you want, man? Do you want somebody that's going to come down and give you 30 and 10 in a pro-am game? Or do you want to watch somebody like isolate at the top, or use the PNR and just fry somebody and put up, 30, 40 points in an exciting manner, like for content to generate like more excitement with the game, for people to have more fun? I just think it bodes better with more advantage for the guard.
And now we're on to finishing. Holy hell, where do I begin? It's just way too overpowered in 23. We've got dudes getting some nutty finishes that are, quite frankly, ridiculous. I don't really care about slasher builds getting contact dunks. That's perfectly fine. And not really my issue with the finishing this year. No. My problem is the contact layups and some of the OP dunk animations. Contact layups are way too easy to get, and way too many of them actually go in. And I really only recommend one change. Make it so that you need to time contact layups for them to go in, the same way you need to time a contact dunk with the meter. This would make it so that there's a big skill gap for slashers, and the guys who can time those difficult contact layups are going to stand out a lot more than players who don't want to time their layups. Another big issue is the dunk meter. I have no problem with the idea of having a dunk meter for contact dunks, but the fact that you can finish meter dunks without greening is terrible. Meter dunks are supposed to be a way for players to initiate and finish contact dunks on defenders, and you should be forced to green those for them to go in. Why is it that you need to green your jump shot, but can easily get away with not greening your meter dunks? It's bad for the game, and only makes the balance between shooters and slashers even worse. Even if it's just an aesthetic issue, and the rate is the same, it still gives off the impression that making that dunk was not earned, given how shots are green or miss in 23. The last thing I want to bring up for finishing is the quick drop dunks. That dunk package is too OP, and even with the threshold increase from 22, it's still way too prevalent in the game. Personally, I would try to tweak the actual animation, instead of just raising the threshold again if I were 2K, but that's just me. 2K does need to do something with that dunk package, it's just way too good. At least for 24, make it 90 plus driving dunk to get it. Something. Anything, because 80 is still too low. While everything I've talked about for finishing is bad, the biggest issue has to be just how unstoppable a lot of the dunk animations are. In 23, it feels like the second any ball handler gets some daylight while driving to the rim, they can just finish about any dunk animation. It's also bad because if a smaller defender comes out of the corner on a rotation, you'll end up with a dunk animation triggering on that defender, even though a big might also be rotating to make that play. The meter dunks don't consider multiple defenders, so the only way to stop those dunks on the defender rotating from the corner is to pray that the other defender helping in the paint manages to get a block, which doesn't happen often.
Yeah, I don't love it. I think they can always improve the contest engine and finishing. I think that the dunk meter is great in theory. I think they still need to tweak it a little bit, but I think they're heading in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, I would, if I was going to grade it, I would give it like a 7 out of 10 this year. That's just me. But there are certain things like, say, oh man, just
like quick drops. Quick
drops. Yeah, I mean, like obviously, like that's super effective. But to me, more than anything, what I've noticed is just I noticed inconsistencies with the contests in interior defense. That to me is what I don't understand this year more than anything. But yeah, I mean that I think that if I was gonna have 2K fix anything, I would say, hey, let's like sit down and look and see like what you guys like, what's causing, interior defense to be the way it is. For instance, like we've all noticed that block does more to stop, dunks and shot attempts at the rim than interior defense does. So like, what is the point of the attribute? Like, what are we? You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing? But James, what do you think about it, bro?
I think that this year, and this very well could be biased from somebody that's never been fond of rim running, but I think that finishing this year is the most unbalanced that it's been outside of 2K21 Next Gen. I think that it's a huge bailout for people that aren't very good at the game. I think that anybody and their mother can just get to the rim and dunk on anyone 9 out of 10 plays, because the people that do that are going to make these giant 6'9" builds with super high dunk, probably some strength, relatively high speed, acceleration, whatever, that they make just to be slashers. They get by everybody and they just dunk the ball every play, super hard to stop. Yeah, my overall feeling is that I think dunking is I think interior finishing. Let me actually backtrack a little bit. I think mashing as a big I think they did a pretty good job with that, in all honesty. I think they actually did find a good balance on that. You make most of the things you should make, you miss most of the things you should miss in that regard. But guards or anybody that's driving to the rim with any kind of space, terrible state right now.
Yeah, I think that I kind of agree with Ginge. I feel like I just had trauma like come back, like thinking about like just playing this game over the year, like when Ginge was talking about that. It does feel at times you do feel helpless. Just by like how like bailout it is on some of the dunks, like you really can score every time if you have space and like the right amount of space, like, and it's so easy to generate that just based off like defensive mechanics this year. I think Jim just kind of hitting that on the head actually.
The last segment for gameplay is obviously going to be about defense. One of the biggest issues with defense in 23 is the paint defense. It's been bad for years now, but 23 was really the breaking point for me. Now, before I go off, I will say that mashing, at least, is not an issue this year. 2K has at least addressed some of those issues from previous games. Despite that, the biggest issue for me is related to jump blocks. So, for some stupid reason in 23, if you as a big man in the paint get a block, more often than not, the guy who went up with the stupid shot will get the ball back before he can even react and go up with a second shot block. And then they will just make it, before he can even do anything, because again, you're still recovering from the previous block attempt. Do I even need to explain just how stupid that is? Why is the game so bad that it rewards shitters for going up with stupid post shots in the paint because defenders take too long to recover from block attempts? This isn't even an issue that gets fixed with the pogo stick badge. I've tried it. The simple fix is having offensive players who get blocked in the paint get stunned for a second or two so they don't get the rebound nearly as often. This would seriously fix some of the issues with paint defense and mashing. I would also recommend buffing the anchor badge just a little bit and lower the frequency of contact layups and dunks going through on players with these gold or half level badges in the paint. I already brought this up when talking about finishing, but the frequency in which driving dunks go uncontested even though there's a defender in decent position to make a play on it is insane. I don't know what the best way to fix it is. Perhaps 2K could add some mid-air collision animations that trigger based on the paint defender's anchor badge level, or how high their interior defense attribute is, or hell, even their strength attribute. I don't know. Just do something to nerf driving dunks just a little bit and give defenders some sort of counter.
It's changed. Like the interior defense has not been the same throughout the year. It's changed. So I think it's probably like a better spot. But I guess to me, I'm just like, I have a bias because in previous 2Ks, like what I've seen go in and what like hasn't gone in, it just feels like it's shifted to me. But I kind of agree with the point that Ginge made earlier in the conversation, where he feels like that they relatively kind of have like a lock on how it should be. Like, you know, most of what shouldn't go in doesn't. Most of what, you know, you miss is missed, or what you should miss is missed. So I mean, yeah, I think it's in a generally good state. I think the only thing they could really improve on is like like how post scoring maybe is affected, and like some of the mechanics of post scoring in the post and defense and stuff like that. Sometimes it doesn't seem like guys with like really high defense are able to contest some of that, but that's also something that's not really, like, no one in the competitive scenes for the most part's hooking, you know, catching on the block and like working in the post, like, so it's not really a huge problem.
Yeah, I think Danger was pretty spot on with everything that he said. The one thing that I think should be changed that isn't even necessarily like, it is interior defense, but it's not like center on center crime kind of interior defense. It's more, you know, defending center on whoever else is driving on them. And what I came up with as my personal fix for that category, I guess, of interior defense would be to give centers a badge that would give them a higher chance of blocking shorter players when they're attempting a dunk.
So like the opposite of Giant Slayer.
Correct.
I also gotta recommend possibly getting rid of Clamp Breaker, or at the very least, changing how it works with clamps. It basically functions as a bailout badge in 23 for ball handlers who cannot shake their defender. Now, what if Clamp Breaker were to be balanced in line with the Clamps badge? Think about this. If a ball handler has a higher Clamp Breaker than the defender's clamps, then the ball handler should get access to blow-bys depending on the disparity. The reverse should also be true, where if the defender has higher clamps than the ball handler's clamp breaker badge, they should have access to bump animations. And if both happen to have clamps and clamp breaker at the same tier, then the one-on-one should be neutral and neither player should have access to those bump or blow-by animations. Last change to the mechanics I would make is to the steal system. At 23's launch, steals were so OP that it made the game miserable to play on offense. It's obviously been nerfed to hell and back in patches, but that still doesn't change the fact that steal mechanics are too easy. There's really no skill gap in that aspect of on-ball defense. Locks shouldn't be rewarded by simply hitting square while playing on-ball defense and praying they get a steal animation. Instead, I would suggest that the steal button is moved to the right stick and the square button functions as an intercept pass button. With stealing being on the stick, you can have it to where players can direct their steals to either the left or right side of the ball handler. So if you guess right or read the dribbles of the ball handler correctly, you should be rewarded with a steal. And if you choose the wrong side, it stuns you for a bit and gives the ball handler an opportunity to drive past you. Tying this to adrenaline bars would prevent any steal spamming and create a big skill gap for locks, with the best locks being the ones who get good at reading ball handlers and knowing when exactly to attempt a steal.
They've definitely done some stuff like that in the past, but I think the big part of what you said is the part about like where if you say you select right instead of like say selecting the steal function towards like the ball hand they're dribbling with, that you're penalized. I don't remember you ever being penalized other than like in recent years where you would reach and kind of stumble and you would be stunned, right? But I don't remember you being penalized for choosing where to reach at. I think if we're gonna have high effectiveness for higher skill attributes, then I think that what you're saying 100% works. But post, they've patched it the last couple of years with like dulled down skills. I think it's kind of tough to want to penalize them too hard if you're not really getting steals as it is, and then you're also like mistiming your reach and just getting fried. It's hard for me to double down on that, but I think there is some fruit there. Like I like the idea. I would at least like to see it.
What if we had this system at 23 launch level of steals?
That'd be horrendous.
It's really high. It's really high.
But
I wouldn't have to
go
guess more than a week.
Obviously, you'd have to.
That's fair. That's fair.
I would say if you're gonna do it, yes, you have to have high steal effectiveness because the risk has got to be worth the reward.
Yeah.
So, if you're gonna punish and penalize people for that, they've got to actually be able to get steals pretty consistently if it's a possibility like that. But yeah, I 100% think that the gameplay should be like more transactional. And what I mean by that is, like we were talking about dribbling earlier, I think guards should be able to break down defenders. If you're gonna neutralize movement, they should be able to do something to like break ankles or stun, etc. Same on defense. If you have that ability and you're really talented at the mechanics, you should be able to time your reach and pluck them if you're playing against a guard that can't dribble as effectively. And there needs to be counters. And I think that's what 2K is trying to work out. We're just seeing them start on like the bottom levels with the badges and stuff like that. I think that they're just so slow to accomplish it. So over the next year or two, I bet we see some things like what you're saying. You're probably going to see something like that added.
I just wanted to say that I do really like the idea. I think it would create a much higher skill ceiling for anybody that guards a ball handler at any point in time. I also think that it adds almost like a form of excitement. Like say you're in a close game, right? And
yes.
the other team's up 3 and you got 30 seconds, right? So the other team's wasting clock. You guys realize that you can't let them score, and you either are gonna have to actually, let's say 24 seconds. All right, 24 seconds. Go for the steal or give up the free throw. What you can do at that point as the person guarding the ball is you can go for that like showtime ginormous play, like game tying or at least making it a real game steal right there, and it's not just a random calculation of your steal button. It's like you actually get to guess and show like I'm built for these moments. You know what I mean?
And man, don't even get me started on the contest system. Contests make 0 sense in 23. You can have a defender completely lost as a guard, and have them wind up at the free throw line and you at the top of the three-point line. And somehow, they can get a light contest simply from getting a jump from hell. And bro, the ghost contests.
Ghost contests are so bad this year. They are so bad. The only year it was worse is 21 Next Gen. It literally makes zero sense this year. You could be wide ass open, take a shot while somebody's closing out from super far, and it'll be like a 30% contest. Or no, more realistically, it'll be like a 12 to 16, which still makes it a tough shot.
Which was like a 30 like last year, basically.
Right.
Like 12
exactly.
to 16 is high.
Yeah, 12 to 16 is high this year. Please, for the love of God, give me 2K22 or 2K20 contest system. Those were both gorgeous. They were perfect. They were absolutely amazing. I have zero issue with them. They made sense. They made perfect sense. This year is so stupid. Oh my God, I could go on about this for hours.
Yeah, I think that. I think he's right. I think that to me, it's like definitely like what I assume is like the Intimidator badge, and it has to be. I mean, that or like their mechanics are just broken. But I mean, just to simplify it, like the NBA game has changed since like Curry's came in. 2K's changed since Curry's came in. Curry is literally comboing up on, guards, small forwards, centers, shooting with like a little space, whatever. So look at Harden, look at anybody that's a creation guard in the NBA. They're open. Like if you do a step back, if you generate a few feet of space, like they're open. You can say like slightly contested or whatever. To me, like to speak on what Ginger's saying about the contest, if they're contesting from from a disadvantaged, spot on the floor, why are we getting game-changing contests on that? And if it's because of perimeter defense or it's because of Intimidator, that needs to be like more detailed, I guess, just in like the game, like gameplay, or 2K needs to like inform us of that. I just think that I think this year there's definitely something going on with defenders getting bailed out by being out of position, and to me it's I think that they've really tried to like take some value away from the three, from like it's almost like they don't want guards shooting threes at a high enough clip. That's all I can think of, because they have added so many things to kind of try to slow it down. But.
Yep, absolutely. And one other point I do want to make is this year, one of the biggest things that bothers me is that a defender can have their back turned to the shooter and still get a serviceable contest. That always just blows my mind.
Finally, just watch this clip. I'm swinging from the corner to play help defense against this driving guard. Now, I already know I'm not in the greatest position, but look at the contest I get for this swing. Open. Fucking open. How in the hell is this shot open? While so many of the perimeter shots I've seen this year are getting contests from another dimension, it makes no sense! So as I was writing the script for this video, I started to come across tweets that were defending 23, saying the game was balanced and had a good skill gap, and I just feel the need to address this argument before moving on. Just because a game has a skill gap doesn't mean it's good. A skill gap is a bare minimum for any game, otherwise it's not much of a game now, is it? Plenty of terrible games I've played over my life have had skill gaps. Modern day Yu-Gi-Oh!, as dweeby as this comparison might be, certainly has a skill gap, and I'd rather shoot myself than ever play that game again. It's so broken. Fortnite definitely has a skill gap as well, but I think you're crazy if you think the building mechanics make that game any good. Simply put, just saying a game has a skill gap is a really stupid argument for a game being good. You need a little more than that, people. Like, come on now.
Yeah, I mean, it's NBA 2K, so you know what I mean. It's not like NBA Street 2K, or I'm sorry, it's not like Street 2K, whatever, like Street Ball, Slam Ball, 2K. So you have to have some realism. There has to be some sim, because it is based off, the NBA, and I mean they've always strived for realism, etc. But yeah, I mean you can only be so realistic. And fun is a huge part of you know, it's a game. Like, I mean, so, you know, you want it to be competitive, but you do want it to be fun. I mean, like, most people don't load up video games strictly for the competitive aspect of it. Like, that's, you know, I mean, we're all there. We've all lived in that space where we're playing 2K for the competitive side. We all enjoy that. But it's also like the times when you're having the best experience is when you're being challenged competitively and when you're having fun with the game experience. So I think it has to be fun.
Yeah, if I could interject, a lot of the more sim heads are often complaining about like left or righting, like the dribbling and whatnot in context of what they're talking about. So I just wanted to add that real quick, just to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think on 2K, looking back, it's always been a left-right game. So I mean, even if you're comboing, I said this earlier in the conversation. If you're comboing or if it's strictly with left stick, it's always left-right. That's how you get open. I mean, that's even how you dex off ball. I mean, it's left-right. I mean, you know, if you're mashing in the paint, you know, there's variations of mashing where you're kind of shifting left and right to try to get the defender like on one side of you or, you know, whatever. But yeah, you know, I think that you can add some complexity layers to it and to try to make it like more challenging to achieve like that movement. But we're never gonna have like a perfect game where everyone's happy because we all like different things. We all play the game different ways. So I think that they need to look back and kind of see some of the balance that they've had on previous titles and to try to implement that, you know, moving forward. They added a lot of new stuff this last year, and I think we need to kind of look back and maybe pull some things from previous titles where they were balancing the sim and the arcade really well, or at least better. But that's just my opinion.
I don't disagree with really anything that you or Danger said. The one thing I will say, just the comment you made about people complaining about left-righting. The left-righting in this game, like in 2K23, like actual left-righting is relatively dead. The issue is that casual players see anybody combo together more than like 3 dribble moves and they're like, oh, this is a left-right guy. It's like, no, that's not what that is, man. Like if somebody's just sitting there dribbling and trying to essentially just cause misdirection, that's all it is. And I'm not referring to the actual dribble move that is referenced as misdirection. I'm referencing like the actual concept of misdirection. Like they're just trying to dribble to the point where somebody thinks they're going one way, they go the other way. That's just dribbling in itself is not left-righting, and that always kind of bothers me whenever I hear it, because
it feels like there's a breakdown with that. Yeah, I agree with that completely.
Their complaints are misguided at that point.
Now, as for 2K23 being balanced, look, I just spent plenty of my time and your time explaining the many issues with 23's mechanics and game balance, but I'll put it in another way I think everyone would understand. In competitive 2K, there are typically 2 approaches to offense, pick and roll and 5-out. Only 2 times was the 5-out the dominant meta, and that was in 23 and 18. And pretty much everyone in the 2K community agrees that 18 was terrible. 5-out being too strong is a clear sign of the game balance being too in favor of slashers and other finishing builds. Not to mention that 5-out is boring and one of the most mind-numbing offenses in 2K. And to say that, oh, you don't like the game? You must just suck. Get good, shitter, is not a real argument. There are plenty of people of all different skill levels that agree 23 is terrible. If almost every comp player I know, almost every content creator I've ever watched, and almost every tweet I see about the game saying it's bad, I think it's a safe assumption to say there is something wrong with 23's gameplay. And okay, I get arguing on the popularity of an opinion is fallacious, but given how overwhelmingly people agree, there's gotta be some truth to it. Surely. The gameplay balance and a lot of the mechanics are just awful. And if you're still not convinced at this point, there's really nothing else I can say to change your mind.
So, I don't know if this is a hot take. I personally think that there are just so many glaring errors with 23, with a lot of it, that you know, people are they're going to say that it's not balanced. And I mean, let's all be honest, like I think this is out of the people that I play with, it's everyone's least favorite 2K that we've played in a long time. In comparisons with like 18, I guess would be like the easy target there.
Yeah.
And 21 current.
This game is worth
So I don't know how y'all feel about 21 current and next. I hated both.
I hated next.
See, I hated current. And that's probably the only thing that Ginge and I. That's the only thing Ginge and I will ever maybe casually disagree on. I despise current so much, but I do think there was a lot of great things about current. Like it was better than next in a lot of ways, but just the shooting on it and like how the archetype structure was laid out, it just felt like it was just like I remember guys wouldn't even guard corners; they would just sit and paint, and let corners shoot open, and like you're just like, what? Like, how is this the game? Like, you know, so they can get the rebound and then it's a fast break. Yeah. I think, but this might be a hot take. I think the game is honestly balanced in a lot of ways. Like a lot of things that used to not be balanced are balanced. But that being said, they've also ruined a lot of things. So I mean, I see a lot of balance, but overall, I would say balance. But yeah, I'll defer to Ginge. What do you think, bro?
I actually agree with you. So looking at it I think that the one thing that is the most overpowered out of everything is probably finishing, but that's still only one half of finishing. Like post score type finishing, where not necessarily like post moves themselves, but like mashing in the paint. That's not broken anymore. It's not broken in favor.
It's so much better than years past. So, yeah.
I look at this game and everything has its own ginormous glaring error within its own system. Dribbling sucks for some reason, like for whatever reason. Shooting sucks for whatever reason. Parts of finishing suck for whatever reason. Parts of defense suck for whatever reason. It is balanced in the fact that everything kind of sucks.
Final thing I'm going to cover as part of the gameplay section is the player builder. First, let me just quickly go over how the builder has changed over the years. Back in 16, the builder was simply choosing inside, balanced, or outside, determining the physical attributes of your build, and then freely choosing which attribute categories to upgrade as you progressed. It was simple, flexible, and allowed you to upgrade the attributes of your choice, and you could easily make a demigod build. Also, you could get any badge in the game and upgrade them all to gold. 17 introduced the archetype system, and limited your badges to 5 Hall of Fame badges, and you could get the rest of the badges in the game at bronze. You also got a grand badge, which was basically takeover before takeover was a thing. 18 added a secondary archetype, and the builder restricted your badges to certain tiers based on what you selected, and you couldn't really choose what to upgrade next as you progressed, since all of that was predetermined based on the archetypes you chose. 19 was pretty much the same, but rebalanced, and they added takeover that year. 20 introduced the pies, which were functionally archetypes, but now you had more flexibility on how attribute points were allocated, except for physical attributes. And next gen introduced the fully customizable builder we still have today, pretty much. The only thing that's really changed since 21 was how badges worked with the tier system, and the various balancing adjustments in the past 3 games. When I started writing the script for this video, I believed that the current builder we have in 23 was the best due to how customizable everything is. After going through all these builders again for this vid, while I'd like to prefer the builder that gives us the freedom to make a build as we see fit, in a social media world where everyone is making the same meta builds that are able to do everything, we need to go back to the role-playing builders. Nowadays we have numerous meta builds on YouTube, and entire websites like 2K Lab dedicated to determining the best builds based on animation and badge thresholds. Obviously those videos and websites would still be a thing, but we wouldn't be seeing everyone running around in 6-9 demigod builds due to how unbalanced the current builder is. One of the biggest problems with 23 outside of the gameplay is the fact that everyone runs on demigod builds. The game has devolved into teams having 3 to 4 LeBron builds on the court and a center who's either a paint masher or a popper. It's so boring, and contributes to the game getting stale earlier in the year. Think about what's going through your mind when you load up into a game of 2K. In 23, do you really care about the archetype names under each player? Probably not. The only key distinction between team comps in 23 is whether the center is a popper or not, and that's about it. Even then, you'll still see builds described as paint beasts or finishers, and be able to bang threes from Limitless. The build names are completely useless. 2K should really return to the builders we had in 17, 18, or 19. Back then, every player had a clearly defined role, which led to more strategizing when it came to team comps. For example, imagine loading into a Pro-Am match and you see your opponent has a stretch big center, while your team has an athletic finisher center. If your team was smart, it would adjust your game plan to take advantage of that mismatch in the paint, and find ways to get your big the ball so they can take advantage of the opposing center's weak defense. And there's plenty of other examples off the top of my head, but you get the point. Get rid of the badge point system and have it so that badges in their levels are clearly defined by the archetypes you chose, and have it to where we grind each badge. Unlike 18 and 19, allow us to upgrade our attributes as we want and not by just random categories being available. There should never be a situation where you can't max out your 3-point attribute on a shooter build until it reaching high 90s like what happened with a few very select builds back then. At the end of the day, I care more about the game being balanced, where various playstyles and team comps are valid. And that's simply not the case with the next-gen builder, because 2K has been unable to properly balance it for the past 3 games, and quite frankly, I doubt they ever will. A major reason that the builder and the animation requirements are so unbalanced and demigods are running rampant in the game is due to the fact that some of the attributes don't even matter. For example, for some reason acceleration matters more for guards than speed with ball. Guards don't need to have speed above 75 for left striding. Builds don't really need passing accuracy above 76, since the LeBron James passing style is the best in the game. Many builds don't need driving dunk above the mid-80s because they get quick drops in silver limitless takeoff. I simply don't understand why 2K refuses to hire quality game testers to go through their game and find these glitchy animations that don't have elite attribute thresholds, or find how attributes affect gameplay. If 23's builder was balanced, in a way where attributes mattered, animations like the LeBron passing style and quick drops had animation requirements in the 90s, and attributes like speed with ball affected gameplay outside of being an animation requirement, this would be one of the best builders ever! I just don't trust 2K to ever balance a builder with this many variables, and it's far easier to balance a builder with predefined attribute caps and badges. Even with the unbalanced animations, since players don't have as many ways to min-max their builds to account for balancing issues I went over. Man, think about the skill gap we had back in 19 with some of those archetypes. On paper, pure locks couldn't do anything outside of defense, but the small amount of elite players were able to bang threes on those restrictive lock builds. Playmaking sharps couldn't finish at the rim on paper, but those elite players could do it on those builds. The community often chirps about wanting more skill gap. There's a perfect example right there. I understand that more casual players may like demigods, and a lot of people believe that our MyPlayers should be superstars in the context of the story being told in the game. Not to mention how the NBA has evolved more into a positionless sport in the past decade or so. For one, very few players in the NBA are even able to play at the capacity of these 6'9 demigods. No team has 3 or more Giannis's or Jokic's running around on the court. One of the best NBA players, Steph Curry, is purely a playmaking sharp. Curry is one of the best NBA players of all time, and he can't finish at the rim like some of these 6'1 PGs can. And I could say the same for all of the other meta builds and any NBA star that's a suitable comparison outside of the top 3, top 5 players in the league right now? It's fun to load up on builds that can do pretty much everything, but it's become clear it's bad for the game as a whole, and I don't trust 2K to ever properly balance a builder with this many variables to account for. The dual archetype builders from 18 and 19 are far easier to balance the game around. I believe it's the best way to go. Just go back to being restricted role players, so that the game can be more centered around team strategy, and give more opportunity for the best players to stand out on those restricted builds. Now, obviously 2K is not going to do that. So, here's my practical solution. At the very least, 2K, make the best animations in the game locked behind 90 plus attributes, and the Demigod issue in 23 dies immediately. make the animations, make their thresholds make sense. Have the best animations in the game locked behind 90 plus, and have all the attributes actually affect the game. If players have to actually invest in some of these attributes that they've ignored in 23, demigods are done. Demigods are gone. So really, the simple solution is just to rebalance the builder with all that in mind. I just don't know if 2K can do it, man. I just don't.
You get nothing! You lose!
2K's content over the past few years has been increasingly terrible. I won't pretend that 2K ever had the greatest content, and it's not like I expect 2K to have Fortnite skins or whatever. Although, to be fair, the company that owns 2K also owns Red Dead Redemption, Borderlands, and the WWE games, so it's not like they'd have to pay for licensing for content like that anyways. One of the biggest problems in recent years is the quality of the rewards we get from playing the game. I think the biggest issue was the change from the year-long rep progression to the seasonal content that was introduced in 2K22. On paper, the seasons sound like a great idea. Instead of people running out of rewards to grind for by Christmas, at least for the die-hard players anyways, now, content would be spread out, so people play the game throughout the year, since there's always new content to grind for. Problem is, well, the content just sucks, and the season system doesn't actually fix the problem it was set out to fix. The first big flaw is that the seasons suffer from weak content. Most of the rewards we get from grinding, they're just crap. They're terrible. There really isn't anything worth grinding for in each season, aside from an extra badge point and some transportation item. Everything else is just useless crap. No, 2K, I do not care about my team packs as a reward for grinding in my career. Crazy, I know. And the other big problem is that a lot of the diehards finish a season's grind in like a week or two. Once you hit 40 in a season, there is nothing else to grind for. That was never a problem in the older systems because the rep grind was something you worked toward throughout the year and could do it at your own pace. You were never restricted to grinding a season and dropping the game for a few weeks once you hit level 40 until the next season drops. So once you hit level 40 and stop playing for a few weeks till until a new season drops, a good amount of those people just aren't going to come back. And this adds up over time, season after season throughout the year. So the content we get through the seasons isn't very good, but surely the Legend rewards are worth it, right, people? In the past 2Ks, hitting Legend was a big deal. You'd have your name on a wall of fame in the next game. You'd get a free copy of the next game. Yeah, you could make an appearance on 2K TV and get the Legend badge, which boosted your badges or gave you 10 plus badge points in each category. Now, in 2K22, you reach Legend by hitting level 40 in 4 seasons, and the prize you got was just a parrot. Now, that reward really sucks, to be fair, but also hitting Legend in 22 was pretty easy, so it kind of balances out, I guess. Now, in 23, look at these requirements to hit Legend. 100,000 points is pretty insane. I mean, unless you got a PG, you're probably not hitting this, let's be honest. Just look at how many points I've got after hundreds of hours playing this game as a corner shooter and a back-end defender on the pick and roll. Yeah, I'm not hitting Legend this year. I knew that from day one. So, let me break down what it takes to get those 100,000 points. Let's assume you're a PG who primarily plays Park and averages 15 points a game. You would have to play 6,667 Park games, and let's assume that these games take an average of 10 minutes. You're looking at 66,667 minutes, or 1,111 hours, or 46 or so days spent playing the game. And I'm not talking about IRL days, I'm talking about literally 46 days worth of game time in 2K. That is a ton of time to invest into a single game, so surely the Legend prize this year was worth that grind, right?
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you out of your mind? So, okay, first thing you win is some stupid car. Oh, jeez, it's not like every level 40 prize we've gotten this year was some sort of transportation reward. Okay, well, maybe Legend gets you some good bonuses to make your build godly. +4 badge points. Bruh, +4 badge points is only good enough for a tier 2 silver badge. Do I have to explain what's wrong with just +4 badge points? Oh, okay, you know what? Class is in session. It's time for me to break it down. When you're making a build in 23, if you're smart about creating your build, you're doing so with the badge and animation thresholds in mind. Like, good players will always min-max their builds, so they meet important thresholds so as not to waste any attribute points. For example, to get Gold Anchor you need a block attribute of 93, and to get to Hall of Fame you need to get it to 99. An optimized build would never have a block attribute between 94 and 98, because you're just wasting attribute points that could go elsewhere, and potentially get you more badge points or meet more thresholds in other attributes. And it's the same in principle for animation thresholds as well. So, good players are going to have builds that are already made with certain badge levels in mind. Even if I get an extra badge point from grinding, it's not like I can just upgrade my anchor badge because I never made my player with that in mind. So I'm capped out at gold anchor, and the badge points are just going to go to other badges that really aren't as effective and certainly not worth the grind. Giving players small amounts of badge points as rewards over the year are a sneaky little way to convince players to make entirely new builds that account for extra badge points. And of course, if players are making new builds, they're going to be spending more money on the game. Very, very sneaky 2K, but I see right through you. Okay, so for the last Legend reward, you get to customize your core badge layout. So you can choose, hypothetically, to not core a finishing badge in favor of coring 2 shooting badges. On paper, this sounds pretty good, but in practice it really only benefits player builds that focus on one specific attribute category. This reward is great for pure sharps, since now they can core 2 of their tier 3 badges in the shooting category instead of wasting a core slot on a finishing badge they don't care about. But again, the issue I mentioned previously still applies. Players who get this reward probably didn't make their build with this option in mind, so they'll just have to make a new one to take advantage of the prize. One last little thing about the Legend grind, it's pretty shitty of 2K to hide what you get for reaching Legend when in the past it was pretty clear what gameplay benefits you got. People grinded for Legend because they knew it would make their build souped up. Hiding what we can win and giving us some of the shittiest prizes imaginable for such a long, tedious grind is straight up horrible. Just tell us what the rewards are for reaching Legend from the get-go, and maybe keep a cosmetic reward a secret, like how you could fly into the neighborhood in the past on a helicopter, or in 21 Next Gen you got like super speed or something. And just don't leave these grinders in the dark going forward. Now, I can't really speak on fixing the content necessarily, like, I'm not going to sit here and list a ton of ideas off the top of my head. There's really only so many different kinds of rewards 2K could come up with, so you know what? Let's see what y'all come up with. Think of some cool rewards you'd like to see in future 2Ks, and leave them in the comments, and I'm willing to bet most of them will be better than anything we see 2K come up with for 2K24. I guarantee it. As for fixing the Legend grind, it's quite simple really. Just go back to the prizes we had back from like 2K18 through 2K20. The Legend grind should give players an overpowered reward. Give players a free 99 build with all the perks they've won. Something, anything is better than whatever the hell 23 was. Now think about this for a bit. Come closer, think, ruminate with me for a little bit. Imagine how hyped the community would be if 2K actually had a 10 to 20k cash prize for the first player to hit Legend. The amount of people playing and grinding for Legend would increase drastically. Now think about this. We're a few months into the game. A handful of guys have been grinding away all this time. They're at the top of the hunt for first Legend. And we got like 5 dudes in the chase for it. Imagine, just imagine how insane the 2K streams and content would be going off as people get close in a race to be first legend. It would be insane, bro. It'd be absolutely bonkers. The streams would be going crazy. We'd see some of the best content we've ever gotten in the 2K community. With all that hype, more people would be getting into the game as well. Given that 2K is handing out $250K a year for the My Team tournament, it would make perfect sense to throw a cash prize over to whoever became the first 2K legend in a year. It just makes too much sense.
That's it? That's the last episode?
Now, some of y'all watching probably don't care about the story in MyCareer, and I get it. Sports games never really had any worthwhile stories, but hear me out. If 2K is going to force us to grind our players through playing half a NBA season for unlocking badges and whatnot, the least they can do is make that experience as engaging as possible, and the best way to do that is to have a worthwhile story for us to follow along with while we grind our builds up. The reason I started playing 2K was due to coming across a Chris Smooth video of him playing through MyCareer back in 2015. At the time, the only sports game I actively played was Madden, and its career mode had nothing on what I was seeing in 2K, so I decided to pick up 2K16 and proceed to pour hundreds of hours into an offline save since my internet wasn't good enough back then. A story being part of the MyCareer experience didn't start in 16, but for the purposes of this video, I don't really feel the need to nor feel like covering the MyCareer stories from any prior game. The 16th story is about Freak, and goes through some of the struggles he and the people around him deal with as he progresses from high school through his first year in the NBA. Living the Dream, which is the name of the story in case you didn't know, is basically a film directed by Spike Lee that is spliced between the on-court gameplay segments. Looking back and playing through it again for this video, it's okay, but I mean it's cool that 2K brought on some great directing and acting talent to take their flagship game mode to the next level. The story is okay, and it goes to some dark places, but like, not really because it's a rated E game, so it's whatever. But it's definitely not without its issues. For one, the story is completely divorced from what happens on the court. It doesn't matter how you perform, since the story will play out the same regardless. The cutscenes themselves can also run for a while. There was one cutscene that went on for over 10 minutes, and I know since my Xbox has a setting to dim the screen after no input from the controller for 10 minutes. Your rookie season is cut down to 8 regular season games and 1 playoff game, and once that's all done, and after Vic dies, the story ends. I think it's worth appreciating in hindsight, since 2K was a trailblazer in this aspect, and games like Madden and FIFA would go on to create stories for their own career modes. But the flaws and structural issues with 16's story prevent me from saying it's what future 2K games should be like. 17's story is the prime example of what a MyCareer story should look like. Let me explain. In 17, you start right off in college as Prez, and then progress through college to a Team USA game, and then you're finally drafted. In most 2Ks, the story would just end there, but in 17, it keeps going. 17's story focuses on your relationship with your teammate Justice Young, as you two develop a dynamic duo called Orange Juice, and lead your team to a championship. The story takes place over several cutscenes that occur over the course of your entire rookie season, as well as plenty of interactions with other characters such as Denver Levins, your agent, your girlfriend who you met in college, etc. Simply put, the story focuses on what happens on the court and the relationship with your teammates. Not to mention the orange juice mechanic. That's exclusive to MyCareer games once you progress far enough in the story that gives you more control over your player and Justice Young. It's an effective, unintrusive story that focuses on actual on-court aspects of being an NBA player, instead of most other stories in 2K games that focus on things that happen outside of the games. 18's story is a bit of a downgrade and rather infamous for just how stupid the setup is. In 18, your character DJ was someone who quit basketball to become a DJ, hence the name. But since that didn't pan out, you find yourself competing in a street ball tournament. Apparently you performed well enough in this tournament that you get offered a contract from an NBA team of your choice. Yes, seriously. From there, you meet a bunch of characters like Shammy Wells, Boo Boo, your agent, and... oh god, Be Fresh.
The flow on his NBA thing. I was on the flow, yo. not bad, right?
I'ma be there one day, you know what I'm saying? With the lights on me, everybody chant my name like beat, fresh, beat, fresh. See, buddy, you gotta get the elbows up, my elbows.
18's story after the stupid setup is similar to 17 in that it's really just a collection of cutscenes and interactions with different characters over the course of the season. You have scenes with Shammy, post-game interviews, talks with other NBA stars, and the rest. It's all pretty alright aside from the fact that some of the cutscenes are... well, just watch.
This boy is gonna be a star, man. He made this song. It's so hot. Hey, DJ, man, hurry up. Come here. You gotta hear this song, Lil Jud drop. It's so fire. Do it, Jud. Do it.
All right, I got you. I'm gonna hit you with just the chorus, okay?
Ooh, the chorus.
Okay. Can you drop me the beat? Yeah, I got you. Come on. Young DJ, call me Rookie of the Year. Do a spin move, might just end your whole career. I'm with Shammy, he's a legend of the game. A legend. Love me, they be calling out my name. Hey!
Oh no, cringe.
Do I really have to go through any more? I'd rather not, because I can only take so much cringe. Okay, cringe aside, I do think 18 had a okay story, but man, it was a real downgrade from 17. 19 marks the beginning of what I like to call the pre-draft era. Essentially in 19, the entire story is about your journey to the NBA rather than about being a player in the NBA. The story starts you off in the China League after you don't get drafted. After a good showing in an exhibition game against a team of NBA stars including your former college teammate Corey Harris, you get an opportunity in the G League with the Mad Ants. From there, the story centers on your time in the G League and the rivalry with Marcus Young. After an incident, you're kicked from the team, but you get a chance on an NBA team in the last game of the season against the Spurs, who just happened to sign Marcus. After the game, you're able to sign with the team in the offseason, and the story effectively ends there. There are still some endorsement-related scenes after that, but the narrative is done. Now, what do I think of 19's story? Well, the story itself is fine, and it's pretty good for what it is. My only real issue is that the story ends once you make the NBA. Nothing really carries over once you start your first season in the NBA. 20 is pretty much the same as 19 with a different story. This time you're on a college team and decide to stand up for an injured teammate who gets cut from the team. This leads to you eventually dropping out of college after the backlash of sitting out of the college tournament, and the story centers around you going to showcases and working with your team to get drafted. And that's basically it. 20 at least brought back the Combine, but that's really all I can praise about the story, to be honest. 21 is by far the best of these games that front-load the entire story to before entering the NBA. 21 has you start out in high school and work with Archie, a former teammate of your late father, as he guides you through your journey to the NBA. Once you're out of high school, you get the choice of entering college or the G League. Now, each choice has its own perks, where college nets you better badge progression, and the G League lets you earn VC and work toward endorsements. College in 21 functions the same as it did in 17. You play the games and work toward raising your draft stock. The G League is the same, but with the bonus of cameos from most of the previous MyPlayers, teammates, and rivals. I'll admit, it's pretty cool to go through as someone who played through most of those older 2Ks. Once you're through college or the G League, you get to choose your agent, which can be Archie or a professional talent agency. Now, each choice has its own commission rate and unique endorsement opportunities. After that, it's on to choosing teams to do workouts with before the draft and participating in pre-draft interviews to help raise your draft stock. After that, you get drafted and that's the end of the story. There is literally zero story content post-draft, which obviously sucks. 22 starts off similar to 21 minus high school. So you get a choice between college and G League again, and once you complete those, you begin the drafting process that includes the Combine again. From there, you pick an agent, which is functionally the same as 21 with just different characters, and once you get drafted, the story actually continues. Crazy, I know! Is it any good? Hell no! The story doesn't really focus on what happens on the court, instead focuses on off-court branding opportunities through music and fashion. Okay, look. Having to collab with the game is cool and all, but is this really the best story content we could come up with, 2K? Is there anything good you get from completing all these quests? Well, yes. You get a zip line from your apartment that'll take you to any of the parks of your choice. Hey 2K, when you came up with this reward, did you ever consider that when I load into the game, I load into my park of my affiliation, and that the only reason I'd ever need to go to a different park is if I'm loading into a park my friend is in, which I'd load directly into the park anyways? Yeah, really great prize, 2K. This totally isn't useless. Yeah, I'm not wasting any more of our time on this. Let's just get to 23. If there is one thing I can say about 23's story, it's at least better than 22's. But in all fairness, that's like saying a giant pile of turds is better than a steaming bucket of diarrhea. They're still both shit! In 23, we don't even bother with anything before the draft, and instead we start off as a mid-first round pick. But here's the kicker. The fans of the team we got drafted to didn't want us. They wanted Shep Owens, the local guy. So the entire premise of the story is to win over the fans in the city? Okay. That's not a bad idea necessarily, and definitely one way to shake things up from previous 2Ks. So, how does it play out? Well, it's okay at first. We start off playing in a Summer League game against Shep's team, which sets up a decent rivalry with them. After that, though, we get a few quest lines on how to win over the city. First is the Palace Intrigue quest, which involves us dealing with our GM Othello. You see, Othello is old school. He doesn't like us focusing on off-court branding opportunities and wants us to keep our head down and focus on things on the court. Well, eventually it ends with Othello's resignation after you prove yourself as your team's leader. It's kinda hard to call myself a team leader when I never interact with my teammates, but whatever. I've probably made it sound more interesting than it is. The questline really just serves as an excuse. It gets you to play NBA games instead of spending all your time knocking out the other questlines. Speaking of which, the other questlines are like the ones in 22 where you work toward earning key endorsements in music, fashion, and getting a commercial with a major local cafe company. These all just involve doing random quests around the city. Yes, 2K, riding a skateboard around is definitely worth my time. Answering music and fashion trivia questions are an essential part of basketball, don't you know? When I decided to load up 2K today, I definitely wanted to run around and do stupid little TikTok dances with this influencer. Oh, Jesus Christ, girl, can you move any slower? I mean, just going through these quests show just how out of touch 2K really is with their player base. Does anyone playing this game give a single fuck about fashion or any of these niche brand cosmetics they decide to load their game up with? I certainly don't. And don't even get me started on the VC cost for these things, man. Nobody cares about this. Like I mentioned before, center the MyCareer experience around your career, and not a bunch of stupid endorsement quests and other crap. There's also a quest line with college flashbacks that don't really serve much purpose aside from unlocking more of these leadership skills, which, okay, hold on, did anyone use these? Like, no, really, did anyone care about these things? Because I certainly didn't. I didn't even bother looking at the menu for these skills. Who actually cared about this feature? And if you're gonna give us college games, have us play those before entering the NBA, don't have us do these in stupid flashbacks. The last questline revolves around a local street ball tournament called The Classic that has you face off against Shep. It's fine, although requiring me to play 15-part games against bots is pretty stupid, I gotta be honest. And let me just speak on Shep real quick. 2K had a real opportunity here to give us a rival, on par with Marcus Young or even Jackson Ellis. But instead, Shep is basically this pathetic Twitter reply guy, and we never really interact with him after the Summer League outside of a cutscene in the fashion quest line and the final game of the street ball quest line. Even when you play against him during the season, the game doesn't really even do anything with it. It's just disappointing and a waste of an opportunity on 2K's part. After completing all these quest lines, the story is over and you get the awesome prize of a statue. Okay, this has got to be the corniest thing I've ever seen in a 2K game. I haven't even finished my first NBA season, and the city has already built a statue in my honor? Statues are for legendary athletes like Kobe or Jordan, not some rookie player who did a few local endorsements and won a single street ball tournament. Yeah, this is just plain stupid. At least there was a decent VC reward, I guess. Okay, so in case you haven't picked up on the subtext of this entire section, let me just summarize real quick. Obviously, everything I've said about the stories are subjective, but I think that a career story should be centered more on the relationships with your teammates, coaches, agents, and the other people close to you, and about your entrance into the NBA and the decisions you make and how they affect you and everyone around you. The story should be about what's going on the court, and include scenes where you interact with NBA stars and develop into one of the league stars yourself. The interviews, scrums, social media posts, and TV appearances you make, and the way you conduct yourself should have an influence on how your teammates, coaching staff, fans, and sponsors view you. Instead, what we've gotten in the past half-decade are either stories that blow their load before the NBA draft, or more recently, stories that don't even bother with what happens on the court. You may as well call the game mode My Marketing for 22 and 23 because the game mode is more centered around endorsements and branding opportunities than, you know, your career, what happens on the court. It feels like the story is being manipulated to justify the existence of the city rather than utilizing the city to provide more compelling content, which makes for a great segue into... The city is one of the worst features added to 2K in recent years. Back in 2018, 2K introduced the neighborhood and it was pretty hype at the time. But there were a few notable complaints. For one, the neighborhood wasn't set up very well, and the park and 1v1 court were way out of the way from everything else. And another big complaint was the removal of affiliations. Now, 2K would fix the neighborhood a little bit in 19 and 20 by making the park the center of the map and everything else was surrounding it like a Monopoly board of sorts. Now, back when 18 came out, myself and surely other people thought of the idea where we'd have affiliations with their own unique neighborhoods, all connected by a central downtown area that would effectively be a 2K city. So imagine my shock when the city was announced for 21 Next Gen. And then I actually played 21 Next Gen, and you know what?
Fucking thing sucks!
The return of affiliations was cool and all, but the city itself was way too big, with too little content to really fill out all the space that 2K had created. Not to mention just how terrible the park was at launch. I swear the input delay was no joke, at least 2 seconds for Next Gen. It was that bad. And then 22 came out, and they decided to add a bunch of story and endorsement content to the city, and well, I can say it's better than 21 at least, but it's still far from good. And then with 23, they made the city smaller to decrease travel time from place to place. These quality of life changes don't actually address the real issue with the city, and that issue is that the city is a complete waste of the player's time. I really want y'all to sit back and think about what the city adds to the game. Hell, do the same for the neighborhood while you're at it. Okay, got it? Yeah, the answer is nothing. The city adds nothing of value to the experience of playing 2K. All it really boils down to is an excuse to fill the game with a bunch of time-wasted side content and advertisements that have nothing to do with the core gameplay. Open worlds and hub areas in games should serve a purpose. Think about the recent Zelda games that came out the past 6 or so years. The open world in these games serve a purpose and directly tie into and affect the entire gameplay experience. These games would not exist as is without the carefully constructed open world and the gameplay that takes advantage of that environment. Now, does the city add anything to the 2K experience? No. In fact, most players just see it as an annoyance, something that wastes time. Now, I'm not gonna pretend that skateboarding across the city to get to the park or the rec takes more than a few minutes. But if you think about it, that time wasted adds up day after day. Okay, so there's a minority of 2K players that believe that the city is actually a good idea and that we need to expand on it. We need to add cars and basically turn it into GTA.
If the city were bigger, you could actually have a reason to add cars into the game that you could drive from your house to the arena or to the parks to play with your friends. And it would be awesome if we could get our squad together in a car.
Man, what the fuck is you talking about?
What the fuck was that?
I'm sorry, man.
I wasn't thinking about it when I did it.
Now, the audio from that clip comes from another YouTuber's video, and in all fairness, I do agree with a lot of the points that were made in that specific video. However, this idea that expanding the city into this GTA-like open-world experience, where we have to drive cars to get to the park or the rec, only worsens the issues I've already mentioned. 2K is not like GTA, and it never will be. GTA is an open-world sandbox game that gives you the freedom to do all manner of reckless criminal shit. 2K is a rated E game that would never allow for such freedom. So what's the point? What is the point of having an open hub world like that? The only thing 2K could possibly get close to with cars is like Forza Horizon without the actual good car driving physics. Again, what's the point? The problem is that the mere existence of the city is nothing more than an inconvenience to all of us, and adds nothing of value, which begs the question, why does 2K keep the city in every new game even though the vast majority of the player base hates it and wants it removed? Well, once you look at it cynically, it becomes pretty obvious. There are two reasons why the city or anything like it is never going away. First, the city serves as a good excuse for the dev team to artificially increase the average playtime of players. And trust me, this is absolutely a thing. The 2K team goes to the Take-Two executives every year and reports on the success of their game, and one of the metrics they definitely track is the amount of time players are spending on their game per session, and the city increases that by introducing a bunch of filler content. And the philosophy behind designing the game like that is to keep players on for as long as possible, because statistically speaking, they're more likely to spend money on microtransactions. So in short, the city exists to keep you on longer because you don't want to get off without doing as much as you used to, and the city pads out the experience so you accomplish less in the same amount of time you would have in a previous 2K, all just to increase the amount of time you can spend considering VC purchases. The second reason is the advertising revenue. The city is effectively a giant advertising space for corporations to pay 2K for in-game advertisements. There's a reason there's so many billboards and buildings with Nike and Adidas sponsorships all over. It's just another revenue stream for 2K, and they'd be dumb to remove those profit opportunities. Look, even though I acknowledge 2K will probably never get rid of these hub world environments, the point of this video is to discuss the issues with 2K and propose ideal solutions to them. So, how would I fix the city? Just get rid of it! 2K already had a perfect system back in 16 and 17 where we had our own My Court and a menu in which we can directly load into Park, Rec, or Pro-Am. Really think about it for a second. Imagine we had that system in 23. You could still do pretty much everything that is done in the city, but in a far quicker, more efficient manner. If you want to play your next NBA game, you can just select it on your schedule and load right into the arena. Want to continue a questline for an endorsement? Just load into the cutscene from the endorsements menu. Want to play Park? Just choose Park from the menu and you load right into your affiliation's park. Want to play Rec? Do so from the menu and load directly into the Rec lobby. Same with Pro-Am, same with events, same with team practice, and it can be the same for the college flashback questline and the street ball questline and so much more in 23. The only thing we'd lose from 23 is what? The stupid hot dog hat quest? The TikTok dance quest? The pointless skateboarding quests? And don't forget about the fashion walk. What great content that is! How could I play my basketball video game without being just able to strut around in my overpriced virtual clothes? Instead of wasting time skateboarding around the city to do anything, it can all be done faster through a My Court and menu system. When we load up onto 2K, it's not to dick around in the city, but to load into an actual game mode and play virtual basketball. This system is what would be best for us, the players, but 2K obviously doesn't care about the experience of playing the game and only cares about making as much money as possible, so nothing is probably going to change for the better in this regard. It's sad to say.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
The point of this section is to go over some of the problems I've seen in the community in recent years, and no, this is not to discuss any specific drama or anything that occurred outside the game. I already spent enough time earlier in the video bitching about some of the community's dumb opinions on 2K23, so I'm not doing any more of that here. I am specifically focusing on issues within 2K itself. The first big issue I'd like to discuss is just how toxic Rec has become in 23. Comms between players on 2K has always been pretty toxic, but 2K added a little mechanic to the Rec in 23 that turned this game mode into a dumpster fire, and that would be the offensive out-of-bounds foul. Now, this was added to stop players for just going AFK in the middle of a Rec game, but 2K is so stupid, so short-sighted that they did not even consider the other repercussions of adding this in. You know how there are those players in Rec who get real pissy if they don't get the ball once in a few possessions? Well, now they have a surefire way to sell the team and troll with this out-of-bounds foul. So even if you load in with a 4-stack, you're still at the mercy of some shitter whose ego got a little bruised because they're just not the focal point of the offense for a game. Oh my god, this has become so bad in the rec, and the fix is really quite simple. Just make standing out of bounds a technical foul, and kick any player who does it a second time in a game. Now, some people have suggested that 2K should add a vote to kick system, and that would make the game more toxic, let's be honest, especially for solo queuers. If we were to have a vote to kick system, it should be something that pops up if a player is racking up frequent fouls or their teammate grade drops to, let's say, a D. Look, as someone who's been loading up into rec with at least 4 people when I've gotten on 2K in the past few months, oh, we would abuse the shit out of that system to get bad players off our team if it was something we had access to at any time. I can't even lie. So 2K, please, at the very least, just make the out-of-bounds penalty an automatic kick from the game on the second time a player does it, and that should fix the trolling quite a bit. Next, let's take a look at the issues within the comp community. Next section is about Pro-Am. There's been a lot of talk over the years about how the Pro-Am community has fallen off, and people have given ideas on how to fix it. Given that you both play comp a lot, and Danger, you actually run one of the biggest leagues in the community, what do you think the community as a whole needs to address to actually fix some of these issues? What steps we need to take? Just in general, ideas that communities can take.
You know, man, I'm biased, so like it's hard for me to speak on this. Like I feel like anything that I say, people are they're probably gonna like see me as having like an angle on it. So like it's hard for me to really speak like I feel like potently, you know, on some of these topics. But as someone that like observed the market as like an outsider, and then as someone that competed in it as a player, and as someone that, you know, has been in every league, every event that the community has to offer, and then as someone that's hosted events and stuff like that, you know, I mean, I think the community is just really a nuanced group of people. I think that it's like more, you know, to me, it's honestly like people play this game that are not gamers. If that makes sense, if that doesn't sound like an oxymoron, if you can unpack that. A lot of people that play 2K because they like basketball. Okay, and so like that's not the same as someone that just games and then finds a game that they like. So like we're dealing with like a really interesting like nuanced community in that sense. So they're not really, you know, used to some of the factors of other games, and honestly they're just kind of very unique personalities. And so sometimes those personalities clash. I think that's kind of one of the first challenges. But then two, the game, the console split, you know, that reduced, just to run through this super quick, the console split when we switched to next gen diversified the community into another, you know, split, which is already split by PlayStation, Xbox. So, you know, I think that if they want to fix this, they need to start there. Unite consoles. You're going to increase the player base. You're going to have more interconnectedness between the community, and it's going to make the game fun. Parks will be fuller. You know what I'm saying? If you can join consoles too, like PlayStation, Xbox, you're gonna double that up. I think that's the goal. As far as you know, the community, the events and stuff like that, OVNs, all that stuff has become an issue. Obviously, like, you know, I'm a huge part of that, but you know, I think that OVNs just offered players something that they were already doing, you know, and they just gave it structure. Like, people were already wagering every night for money. People were already going and playing tens lobbies until 4 or 5 a.m. Like, this was all part of the community. All that we did with daily events was give it to you in a structure that is, you know, it's gonna make you accountable. And these players, you know, they don't like to be held accountable, so it causes a lot of issues. And then to jump over to seasons and why they're dying, you know, it's a format that we've just seen for like 4 or 5 years. So I mean, players, it's just the same, you know, it's the same shit over and over again. And when the pots are decreasing and participation is down, you're not motivating them to play anymore. You know what I mean? So you know, I think overall, just to hit it on the head, you know, you need corporate sponsorship for Pro-Am and park events that are private. You need to increase money to generate excitement, and they need to solve the console switch. or the console split, excuse me. That would improve everything in the community, in my opinion, tenfold. But yeah, that's. I mean, James, you can jump in. I don't want to talk on this like too much.
You're good. My one big thing that I've been preaching for years at this point is I think that there needs to be at least one extremely well marketed, like marketed to Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, literally everywhere that you could find players, like looking for group, even anything that is incredibly affordable, like I would say $20 per team, and it has incentives for playing a lot of games. And the comparison I typically use is TPO, and for anybody that remembers back in 2K20, TPO was easily the second biggest league ran in the 2K community. Everybody played in it. It actually had a really good payout because so many teams signed up, and it was the most active Discord for regular season games I've ever seen. So much so that to this day, people still use that Discord to find matchups because there's just so many members in there.
It's just stacked up. And yeah, I think that TPO just they had like a team of people working on it, and so like they were very well staffed. It was obviously like a group of close friends.
Yeah.
And it was super well structured, and then their marketing also wasn't so polished that it came off like a UPA event.
Yeah.
But it had like a certain it just appealed to most of the communities. Like you know, it appealed to them. I mean, Dog of the Night. I still look at all of that. I mean, we do Player of the Nights now for Hoff, and I mean, if you don't think that I thought of TPO when I came up with that idea, I mean, I'm crazy. Like, absolutely. Yeah. Dog of the Nights, man, that was some of the easiest content they put out.
Yeah.
And it just gave man, players, they were like, hell yeah, man. Like, I got some recognition for playing reg season games.
Right.
And it gave casuals more of a reason to play in the season. So I think TPO had a lot to offer, and I think Jen's just 100% right. You need something that's gonna, a lot of our competitors with Hoff, they always try to market it like low risk, high reward. So like low risk, $20, $30 for a sign up, high reward is in the total pot. I don't know why the community doesn't respond better to that since TPO's left, but I do know that that UPA takes up such a large market share with all of their events that teams. They're already spending $110 once to twice a month just on UPA events, despite roster fees or anything like that. There's just less money to go around. And Squad Finder tried to do kind of like what Jen just talking about, and they didn't get a lot of momentum. And part of it could be because they don't market the same way as TPO, but it just seems like the community almost feels too good for that price tag at this point. And I have no idea why. Like it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, if you remember the pots, their total pots for each console, or it might have just been Xbox, but their total pots for Xbox back in 2K20 were pushing like $5,000, dude.
It was a lot. Yeah. It was a lot. I can't remember. I remember on Xbox TPO would do between 150 and like 180 Xbox teams, and they would do between like 180 and like 240 PlayStation teams.
Yeah,
and that would be
charging like $5 for roster fees.
$20 to $30 for entry, depending on when you registered, and $5 for roster fees. And I even think that something that TPO did that leagues don't really do now is they don't add the roster fees to the total pot. Like, I think TPO was actually adding like the roster fees to the total pot as well, and then taking their cut from that. Okay. Which is because they had to find a way to be like more competitive.
Yeah.
To you know what I mean, for to compete with WR and stuff like that.
Yeah, because back then WR had 10K plus pots.
Yeah, that was like you were doing everything you could to even fight, and that's something else I think that that people kind of overlook is like let's not forget they're harsh on us, and I don't want to speak in defense of Hoff too much, obviously, but they're harsh on us for some of our saturation and stuff. Let's not forget that when Hoff came in, UPA had killed off every other competitive league. We weren't supposed to make it. We weren't even supposed to be a league. We fought through it all, and there was a window with the next gen switch, and then we made it happen. But every other league had died at that point. So, I think that 2K, the community's been having issues I would say since console switch, and but Ginge is right. We need to figure something out where we can get casual pro players into this league or into the competitive sphere, and in a cheap, affordable way. And man, I've been thinking about something lately. Not to jump off onto something else, but man, like we should like make an ebook. Something to educate the casuals on terms and strategies and stuff like that. Yeah. And I just think that like they need to be more educated and on Pro-Am. And I think that would make them feel more comfortable, and it might make them want to stick around if they knew what back end was or what a triangle was, or PNR, like different presses, call out stuff like that. Like we need to pick up the whole community and lift up the casuals, because if we don't, at the end of the day, we're only going to have we're going to have the same community we have right now, and that's like 10 to 15 competitive teams on both consoles, and it's just, everyone hates it.
And not to mention, if you're not bringing in casuals, the community's going to slowly die because older dudes are just leaving year after year.
Yeah. Well, at this point, the cost of entry is crazy, because a lot of these people have only ever heard, and this is no disrespect to Hoff whatsoever, but like these guys that are the Facebook OGs and stuff like that, they've only ever heard of like WR and MPBA, and so
absolutely.
That's what they think of whenever they're like, oh, maybe let's sign up for a league. They go and look at it. It's $100 a season for like, what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? They're like, oh, never mind. Let's not ever do that again.
I will say that now, since we've been hot, like we've I would say since last post-draft, that there are, and maybe some of pre-draft, there are participants that came into the community playing our events and then were introduced to WR. But like, I don't kid myself whatsoever. I know how to, I know the pecking order. Jen's 100% right. Most people, especially the older community, when they think of Pro-Am, it's MBPA WR. And then, they go look at it, and it's like roster fees are $20 now. Right. Or, I'm sorry, $15. I think it's $15 now. And sign-up's $110. And it lasts 2 weeks. And, there's WR just had a season where they had 16 teams in the Xbox playoffs.
Yeah.
And so you're supposed to get how many games in 2 weeks in an inactive post-draft? Like, it's just not conducive, and that's part of the reason why seasons are dying. That's part of the reason right there. And there's a lot of them. But I'm supposed to pay $110, and I'm supposed to hit this requirement, and then I might not even make the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like, who the hell wants to pay for that? It doesn't make any sense.
Yes, especially given how expensive it is to play 2K anyways.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. That's a super good point. Yeah, 150 plus all the time invested. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too much. It's just too much for a lot of people. But let's just break down the 4 questions I had here underneath. Are there too many events, like too many leagues? Danger, you kind of covered this. It's not really necessarily a events issue, because before Hoff came around, it was just MPA. It was just
So I'm gonna say that there are too many leagues and there are too many events, and we're a part of that problem. But UPA is a part of that problem. Draft leagues are a part of that problem.
Yeah.
We're all contributing to it. But ultimately, other leagues forced our hand to run more events, and so we have to, because we want to be a part of the community and to service the community and to fulfill the role that we want to. We have to offer those events, and if we're not at this point, someone else will. So if you're telling me that for the morality of the community, that I should stop running my events and concede it to a league that's not going to run it as effectively and isn't even the founder of the concept, who didn't champion this, you know what I'm saying? Like,
oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's hard for me to do that. Because we've worked hard to cultivate the daily tournament market, and we've had 5-6 leagues that have came for the market, and we've held it. So it's tough. But ultimately, if it was up to me, just singularly, I would say that I would want to reduce events. I would want to reduce leagues. I would want all major leagues to stop what they're doing and to collaborate and to try to come up with a plan. And I genuinely think that. I think that there should be one UPA league. Like, there should be, like, UPA should not have 3 separate leagues.
It should just be called UPA. Like, you sign up for
UPA.
Just make it UPA at this point.
Yes, 100%. And
having
everything
so many leagues under that umbrella, I think, makes it sticky, and all of them having the same price tag makes it even worse.
I don't. What does UPA own aside from WR? I forget.
MPBA. Next up, what's the one that? SL. What's the one that LabBot ADBA?
Squad Finder. Wait, I'm sorry. Squad Finder's not UPA, but I don't know how that exactly was broken down. But yeah, right now there are three main leagues: are WR, Rising Stars, MBPA, and SL. Those are the mains.
I don't understand why WR and MPBA are separate things.
I don't either.
I think it's just I'm not sure either. I think it's just like a historical thing that they don't want. Like, I mean, let's be honest. Like maybe not half, but a lot of the coaches for the first round of 2K season, they were all like MBPA founders. So MBPA is just like baked into the community. But yeah, I think there should be less OVNs. I think there should be less day, midday AFNs. There should be less seasons, and it should all be consolidated and better collaborated. And I think in that, if you did that and you found some type of corporate sponsorship, I think in like a year you would see 2K transform into something that would be amazing.
So there were 2 points I really kind of came up with that were issues. One, building off the number of events, I think the barrier to entry to hosting events is way too low, and the community definitely contributes this to a lot, which is the second point. I think when you combine the fact that there are a lot of dudes who will willingly host events just to get a bag, on top of the fact that there are plenty of players in the community who will chase meaningless trophies just to say you won something, combined together just to create basically the environment we have right now, where there's just too many events going on and players are just spread way too thin. And I'm looking from the outside in nowadays. I don't really care about comp anymore the way you guys do, but looking from the outside in, it's honestly it's basically a supply and demand issue. The amount of supply the community provides in terms of events and anything is just way too high for the amount of players we have and the amount of money going around. It's no wonder why it's died off over the past few years. Or it hasn't died off per se. It's fell off from where we were back in 19 and 20. Back in the golden days, I guess you could say.
So just to jump onto it real quick, I think what is the question ultimately? Well, just so that
the question ultimately is, should the community as a whole be a little more selective with how we approach events and such? Like, should we be a little more selective about who we allow to host events and legitimize for that?
Because, I mean, on one hand, like I host, so yeah, I mean, I would say that. But like, what? I don't have a degree in hosting these sports events. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really have. So it's hard for me to speak too strongly about it because, there's players in the community that play consistently and they have some really great ideas. And I would love to hear them, and I think that they should be empowered, to be successful if they're able to be innovative with an idea or to do something. They can contribute to the community. I'll say, but yes, ultimately, I do think that the bar is too low, and I think that there's not really a lot we can do about that. So I think that it is low, but if you were to ask the people in the community about who they trust running certain events, there's a general consensus. If it's like BYOT, they can rank who they trust to run the events 1 through 5, and it's usually going to go UPA, HOF, and then it would be between. I don't want to leave anybody out because there's so many leagues these days, but UBL, 6GA, some of those guys. I'm probably missing somebody, but you guys get this, the gist of it though. Personally, I'm biased, but I feel like we're only second to UPA, and I know that I speak to the community daily, nightly, and I know that we have a lot of trust. We get a lot of flack for OVNs, but also that's because OVNs are the most difficult events to run. There's a reason why no one did it before us. It's hard to have an entire what would be the playoff bracket for WR this season in one night. It's tough to pull that off logistically. Because players, you know, they start at different times and are ready at the same time. You could have one team, you know, use their entire window for like in between games, right? And then that's pushed the event back. And then you could have a totally other team do the same thing, and then they push the event back, and it's totally unrelated, but now the event is ending 1 hour later. And you don't necessarily punish someone the first time they do something. If you have a team that plays your events consistently and there's never an issue, and then there's an issue one night, you don't punish them. You're not that's just not how that works. But there should be more structure, and you know, that's something we're going to look at.
I've heard a lot about the 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. overnights lately.
I know, man. It's been a fun topic lately. It's been I just peeked in the FT chat and I saw that there was like some conversations about that when we were all talking. And I mean, you know, that's basically what happened last night. You know, and it's even tougher. What makes that conversation even worse is that Xbox is generally of older people, and they're less competitive, and they want to pay less to compete. Xbox teams are not playing the OVNs to win money. Like last year when Xbox was playing, and it was Kazooie and all those guys and a few other Xbox teams, they were playing for the bread. It is not about that anymore, man. These guys are playing it for the experience on Xbox. It's like something to do. And I mean, we're generating 70% of the signups of a league, of other leagues, UBL, WR, you know, etc., on a nightly basis for OVNs. You know, I don't know. I just think that community, they really don't want to play the leagues as much, and as much as they complain, I mean, those guys they do it every night. So there's not a lot we can do. If you want to play the event, you're going to have to deal with those issues. But real quick, I know I just went on a tangent. What's changed in the last year for the community as far as the saturation, the lower threshold, all that, whatever? When we launched OVNs, we were tapping into something that was already happening in the community. They were fed up with the format. The format was bland. The format was dull. What you've seen since then, you've seen SIBA rise up. They have created something on Xbox that it's the same thing. It's something outside of that format. It's something that's consistent. It's daily. It's got structure, and it's something that players can use to make content, however small, you know, the viewership of that content is. So ultimately, I think that just like the format for the community got bland, and I think that that's what's happened. And now since then, what you've seen is GCL, other things pop out. Leagues are more emboldened to run different events now. Like they're like, holy shit! Like these guys, they want to stay up 10 hours and play for $200 or $300. Like, wow, we can let's try this. And so you're just seeing leagues are just trying different things, and I think that's added to it a lot. So, you know, in my opinion, just the format was bland a couple years ago, and you know, now there's just so many options because now everyone knows, you know, players, they're willing to do a lot more. Whereas used to, it was strictly just league play. That's all you saw in the competitive community. Was a tournament here or there, and then just a season. So
yeah,
that's kind of what
like a season opener, or like a WR Open or whatever that was at the beginning.
When we talked OVNs, I don't know about you, Ginge, but like it basically was just like, wasn't it like just league tourneys and seasons? I don't remember a lot of other events.
It was just league seasons and tourneys. I remember.
Well, that's why we came up with the idea, because it was like you, me, and a group of people were in a party one night, and I was like, man, I really wish there was like something of substance to play right now that wasn't just fucking matchups. And you were like, should I just run a tournament, like a one-night tournament with Hoff? I was like, yeah, do it. And
100%. Yeah, it was right after the draft that year. Yeah, that's exactly how it went down.
There was just nothing else to do because you're right. It was just league tourneys and seasons.
All right, let's move on to next one. Are teams not sticking together, players snaking a problem? So this is more like a community culture question. Do you think that's a problem here nowadays? Because remember back in the 2K18 days before private matchmaking, players would have to stick together and grind up their team to like a really high rank just to even do anything in WR and whatnot. So do you think that culture shift has really had a bad impact?
Yes.
That's a good point to say about the rank court thing. The rank court thing, I totally forgot about that. So I was like, holy shit, you're so right, bro. I forgot. You did have to rank up to Elite 3 to even play. Ginge, go take this one though, bro, because I was super long-winded on that last response.
Yeah. So I actually read a tweet from, who was it? I believe it was a league coach. And earlier today he said, I remember when the 2K community knew what teams were playing each other when and who was on those teams. And people would talk within parties and ask, hey, are you going to watch Kiss My Tims play whoever tonight at whatever time? And they would actually watch it. And those games would have peak viewership. Like, for example, I remember when Chalk played on Kiss My Tims in 2K19. He played on that team all post-draft. And every single night that he would stream, he had over 2,000 people consistently in his streams. That doesn't happen anymore. The 2K League itself hardly gets, 2,000 people. And I think a lot of that is due to there not being any rivalries or anything like that. Like, a good stream now for anything is like 200 people. And that's typically for like
I think Bauer hits that, doesn't he?
Bauer does hit that. Bauer does hit that during OVNs. And you have to take into consideration his team has won a shitload this post-draft. Like, Joe Knows has been winning. And, Bauer's the person that gets to stream for that team, so great for him getting to reap those rewards. But that's good numbers now. 200. Where in 2K19, it was like 1K, you were like, okay, this dude's playing a big series. That just doesn't happen anymore, and I think a lot of it is just lack of rivalry, lack of excitement, lack of hype, everything like that. And a lot of that comes from all of these different players playing with each other. Like, you look at anywhere Benzo goes. If Benzo goes somewhere, it's a super team, and they're winning.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point I was getting at. There's no community-wide narratives.
Yeah.
There's nothing people talk about in terms of players or matchups or anything, because people are switching teams all the time. And I think a lot of the blame for that gets misplaced on OVNs and there being so many events and whatnot. But it's just because of how the game's changed over the years and the
clientele.
The new incentives. Like, a lot of people who play this now want to make the 2K League. Well, no one really cares about sticking on a team. They care about winning. And they're going to do whatever it takes to win because they want to make it to that league. Well, of course people are going to snake and switch teams around trying to find the best way for them to get there.
Yeah, they've got an opportunity.
Yeah, what's happened is that again, there's no rivalries. Why should I tune into a 2K stream at night just to see 5 randomly put together teams and go at it? What the fuck do I care?
Right.
It's I think honestly, I feel like the community since like next gen.
I think that is the big shifting point.
Yeah, it became more centralized on Twitter too. Like, something happened right there where, like, going back, I feel like relationships and partnerships on 2K, it almost happened more organically somehow. I don't think that most of the connections were made on Twitter as much, whereas now it's like 99% of like how you recruits on Twitter.
Yeah.
My big thing is I really just think that the player base is so depleted in the last couple years that you don't have 1,000 people that want to watch, Chalk and stream, because there are just less people that are on.
Yeah.
And then two, there's no. People aren't staying together because what we've done is we've created the UPA where the grand prize is what, like 50K, 20K, 100K. Is the biggest one 100K? Is that what it is?
It was
okay.
100K.
So you're telling me, competitively, if you're gonna go play, in 5 or 6 seasons of WR and Hoff, whatever, you're gonna spend $700-800, and say you're gonna invest, $1,000. You're just going to play with your homeboys over and over again. That's not how it's going to work when 100K is on the line. That's not how that's going to go. Yeah. And then what we've done, we've made the system and the culture more like Darwinian. And what I mean by that is the better players
people gotta eat. People want to eat.
Yeah, bro.
They're not gonna stick around with the people they know. They're gonna go where they're gonna get their bread, essentially.
They're gonna go where the better players are, and they're gonna go where the players want to put in more effort. People that play the game all day are gonna play with someone else that plays the game all day. That's just how it is. In the past, you logged in and you played from like 7, 8 p.m. until like midnight, And then you would go play like some stage. You go run some tens. You might wager somebody late night. The whole community has shifted. You have the most competitive events every night at your access. And so if your friends, if they're not down to stay up and play until 3 or 4 a.m., they're getting left behind. Yeah. And I think that's been a huge part of that. I think that you're just seeing teams are just splitting off and they're playing with the better players, and those other guys are being left behind now. But ultimately, I think that's bad. But I'm going to say this. No one ever says this shit about OVNs. I'm going to say it right here, bro. The community has gotten better at 2K because of this shit. 100%. They were mad at us because Greenlight and Greens were playing in OVN finals 3 or 4 times a week. And now look at Greens and Greenlight, in the fucking 2K league, bro. Like they were exceptional before OVNs by far. They were some of the best guards, but it made them better. It made Greenlight better. It made Greens better. And a lot of Antoine also, tearing up the league right now. What was he doing for the last year? Playing overnights consistently. When he wasn't playing overnights, he was playing playoffs. Anybody that's competitive, they're going to be doing that. So, but I just think that the community's more Darwinian, and it's splitting up a lot of the teams, and that's what's leading to the snaking. And if you have the opportunity to win money every night, you're not waiting for that league playoff. You can win a few hundred tonight. You're going to want to play with somebody better. It's not going to be, let me go play with like my friend, or whatever that I know that we're going to lose with. It's going to be I want to go play for the bag. So
yeah,
I get that. I just think at the end of the day, the streaming isn't as good. There's no great narrative. I think part of that, maybe part of that is that there's like no communication or journalism per se in the community.
Yeah, all the people that did used to do that are gone. They're in the league.
There's no storytellers. There's no one really doing any of that, and I think that might contribute as well. At the end of the day, everything that's been said up to this point in the video doesn't really matter as long as 2K continues being this expensive to play. The game itself costs $70, and that's just to get access to a mode like MyCareer. The amount of VC it takes to fully upgrade each build is a little over $100 in terms of VC. Really think about that. It costs you a total of $170 just to be able to play 2K with a maxed out build. And that's just in terms of VC. That doesn't even account for the amount of time it takes to even access those high overall upgrades and grinding for badge points. Now, I don't have a problem with the length of the grind itself, but having to grind a build for like 20 to 30 hours and then spend $100 on top of all that time spent is fucking ridiculous. Not to mention the fact that all builds start at 60 overall. Imagine you're a kid and you get 2K as a Christmas gift and you load up and you see your player is only a 60 overall. Well, you can't really play any of the online modes because either your build sucks and can't do much, or everyone else on the game can see your build sucks and won't want to play with you. The casuals have no good reason to play 2K anymore because it just costs way too much compared to other available games right now. Let's compare 2K back in its cultural peak that I'd argue was from 16 through 20. And for most of that time, 2K's competition was like a $60 Call of Duty, a Battlefield, or other sports title when it came to gaming casuals. Since then, however, 2K has to compete with free-to-play games like Fortnite, Apex Legends, Warzone, Overwatch 2, Rocket League, and so many more. Now ask yourself, why would a casual gamer spend a minimum of $70 to play a game like 2K when they could play those free games? The only people willing to shell out that kind of money are the people who are already interested in basketball or 2K diehards, and would probably buy 2K regardless. Teenagers and college students who don't have a lot of money and are looking for a game to play are not going to pick 2K when all these free-to-play games are on the market. Think about friend groups. It's a lot easier to get all of your friends to download and start playing a free-to-play game. 2K has lost the casual audience, so now the game is mostly made up of diehards, which contributes to the toxicity issue I mentioned earlier. Hell, just look at the viewership on Twitch over the years, and take a look at NBA2K's sales numbers. The game is clearly on the decline, and keeping the current monetization system is only going to further it. The simple fix is to make the game cheaper to play. Now, we can debate all day about the specifics, but I think most people can agree with the idea that the MyCareer and MyTeam modes should be available in a free-to-play version of 2K. If 2K wanted, they could sell the rest of the game like Play Now, My NBA, and the Jordan challenges behind, let's say a $40 to $50 paywall. But the microtransaction heavy modes should be free to play. Also, it should never cost $100 to max out a single build in MyCareer. $50 is the absolute maximum I'd agree with, assuming the game goes free to play. If I still have to spend $70 to get the game, then that number should be even lower. This game is loaded with microtransactions, and it has really gotten predatory in recent years. By the way, did you know that Take-Two executives receive a huge financial bonus every year, depending on the number of microtransactions sold in all their games? I just thought you should know, just to make clear where the company's priorities are when it comes to these games. I've talked plenty about what to fix and how so in previous sections, so I won't be rehashing a lot of that here. Instead, I'm going to use this section to cover fixes and improvements that weren't specific to anything discussed so far. First off, I already mentioned that 2K should go free to play, and I think I've done enough to explain why in the last section. It will revive the casual audience for this game, thus there's more people in queues, parks, pro-am, etc. And guess what, 2K? The more people playing your game, the more microtransactions you can sell. Crazy, I know! Another big request in recent years is the implementation of cross-plat. This is just a no-brainer. Cross-plat would immediately help fix the lower player counts on different consoles due to the generation gap between old gen and next gen. Speaking of which, 2K needs to just straight up abandon old gen at some point soon. I get that some of y'all watching may still be on those old consoles, but here's the thing, it's been 3 years now, and the quality of the games have clearly deteriorated in part because 2K feels the need to create 2 separate games every year. Rather than making 2 games, the devs' work should be consolidating to creating a single game on next gen, and stop creating new features and content for old gen games. They should really just be a roster update at this point, like every previous old gen sports game from previous times when we shifted to a new console. And don't bring up the argument that it's too expensive or difficult to get a next gen console. For one, it's been 3 years. If you play 2K enough to at least come across this video, and you're incapable of saving $500 in the time since we knew the next gen was launching, you probably shouldn't be spending that much time on video games in the first place. Gotta be honest. And, not to pocket watch, but come on, let's be real here. Second, the supply chain issue really isn't a thing anymore, so it's not like it's a struggle to get a new console like it was a year or two ago. Trust me, I've been to Best Buy in my local area recently. There are PS5s on the shelves. It's really not that big of an issue now. So, simply put, 2K needs to leave old gen behind soon to focus on next gen and deliver cross-platform so we're all on a single game. So now let me break down how to fix the various game modes in MyCareer. First, let me talk about Park. Park's biggest problem is the amount of time in between games due to there not being enough people in parks to consistently fill up those Got Next spots. Now, this is primarily due to the city being a thing, and I already spent plenty of time complaining about that. The only other thing that I've heard that could be changed is to make the sliders in Park even more casual friendly, so new players have a good mode to play outside the NBA games. Now, I know for some of y'all, you're not going to like that, but give me a bit and you'll see where I'm getting at. The Park should be the most casual mode, and Stage should be the most competitive when it comes to threes, with what I'm going to talk about next as a middle ground. Another big change that I've seen proposed in the community is a ranked matchmaking system. Replace the theater with a solo queue ranked matchmaking system, so players who don't have a full 3 or 5-man squad can have a place where they can play more competitively against players of a similar skill level. Imagine in this mode, you can queue up for ranked 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, or 5v5, similar to what Rocket League does, minus the fact that you can't party up. The ranking system could use the same tiers for badges, with 5 divisions in each, so the system could have rankings from Bronze 1 to Hall of Fame 5. Now, the reason I think it should be solo queue is only due to the fact that there's just so many other ways to play the game with squads. This is just a way for solos to get better, more competitive experiences if they're not into Park or Rec. Speaking of Rec, I already discussed the trolling issue before, and that's really my only big issue with the mode, but I've got 2 more suggestions. First, don't allow squads of 5 to queue up in Rec. 5 stacks should only be queuing up in Ranked Pro-Am. Also, if we're gonna stick with seasons, give the Rec a new court every season on top of the uniform changes. It's a small but cool little way to freshen up the visuals every month or so. Now, I suggest that Rec prohibit 5 stacks from queuing up, and I wouldn't suggest that without fixing Pro-Am, so let me talk about that. Of all the ways to play in MyCareer, Pro-Am is by far the most ignored over recent years. Pro-Am literally has had no positive change since the introduction of private matchmaking back in 19. So, how to fix it? First off, 2K really needs to sit down and fix the bugginess of matchmaking in connection to the servers. The disconnects, along with the wonkiness of finding games, are completely unacceptable. Second, revamp the ranking system. Maybe change it to the one I suggested for the solo queue rankings, and make sure that the ranking system and leaderboards best reflect who the best teams are. Third, get rid of League Nights. League Nights were introduced to improve queue times during select hours, but because the Pro-Am mode lacks any incentive to grind out those ranks, no one really bothered queuing up on those League Nights. People are not going to go out of their way to get 5 people on at the same time for League Nights without any incentive. Which brings me to my final fix. Pro-Am needs rewards and incentives to get people playing the mode. First, bring back arenas. In the past, your team got access to a bigger arena by reaching the elite ranking. Nowadays, you play in the same arena regardless of ranking. 2K already has an arena builder in my league. Just bring that feature over as a reward for teams that reach a really high rank. Another change I thought of was giving rewards to players on teams that rank in the top 100 on the leaderboard. Imagine getting a +1 badge point, or maybe even winning like 25 to 50k VC for grinding on a team to the top 100 for a season. 2K should also consider bringing the All-Star Tournament back. The 2K League is too distant and elitist from the rest of the community to really appear achievable to any player interested into getting into the more competitive aspects of 2K. The All-Star Tournament would generate a lot more buzz compared to the league. All of these changes are meant to generate more interest in the mode and get more people engaging with the comp side of 2K, which ties right into what I argued was the biggest issue with the comp community. Generating more interest via Pro-Am would get more players interested in community-run events, which means more players signing up for events and larger prize pools. One last thing that should absolutely change is the overall we start with on our builds. As I mentioned earlier, 60 overall is too low to actually engage with the game, so 2K basically nudges you into buying $50 worth of VC to get your build up to a low 80 overall. Again, this is really off-putting for new or more casual players looking to try out the game. I'd argue that having our players start off at 75 overall is perfect. For one, it falls in line with most other rookie overalls in the game, and gives builds high enough attributes to at least be good enough to do something on the court in online game modes. There was once a YouTube video I watched where the guy said that life is too short to waste on bullshit. Now that I'm older, that quote is always lingering in the back of my mind. I'm now in my mid-20s, and the free time I get nowadays is far more limited than when I was a kid or a college student. So I prefer for any of that time spent gaming to be on good games. The 2K series has fallen off so hard that it's gotten to the point where I question whether it's even worth my time or money to keep buying and playing these games. 2K24 might be the last 2K I ever get if it's not a substantial improvement over 23. Why spend hundreds of dollars on a 2K game when I can spend $70 and play something like Tears of the Kingdom, God of War, or even Starfield, assuming it doesn't launch like Fallout 76. I've never had a love for basketball like a lot of 2K players. There's no NBA team in my hometown, so I never really grew to care for the league. I mentioned it earlier, but the only reason I ever got into 2K was from watching a Chris Smoove video and seeing how more in-depth the career mode was compared to Madden. But with the game getting worse recently, any interest I have is really starting to wane. For me to consider 2K24 a substantial step up from 23, these are the bare minimum features I'd like to see. First, crossplay. Make it happen, 2K. Second, make sure the builder is balanced. That all attributes matter. in that the best animations are locked behind 90+ attribute thresholds. Third, make the city easier to navigate and stop centering the story around the stupid city quests. Finally, please give Pro-Am the attention it needs and implement some of the changes I suggested for it. If 2K24 doesn't have some of these improvements, then I'm just done with the series as a whole. Now, this is the end of the video, but there's probably a few issues I may have missed, so in the comments below, feel free to add any issues you have with the game, or changes you would like to see in the future 2Ks. As for future videos, I'll probably work on some shorter videos here and there for the rest of the year, and I'll leave y'all with a little sneak peek for the next big video I'll be uploading sometime next year. But anyways, thanks for watching through to the end, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?